All right, we're here at the Obsessed Garage, the Matt Mormon castle, basically.
Tiny little condensed, too much going on in one tiny little spot. It's driving me crazy. You know, on the other side, there's boxes just stacking. I feel like I'm at my grandmother's, pack rat house. It's driving me nuts.
But you're kicking ass. So, I mean, you have so much overspill in that. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us. And, we were here about, 18 months ago with a little collab move. Yeah. So thanks we'll just get into it, have some fun, talk about Porsches. A lot's changed in 18 months from a business perspective and in your cars. So, that's kind of cool. So we'll get rolling.
So just because we're going to release this, if you guys just do like a 2-second intro.
Yeah.
Because it's been a year and a half since on the Obsessed Garage channel they've gotten to know you guys.
Absolutely. So, all right, Mike and Aaron from P-Car Talk. We do a lot of Porsche podcasting, a lot of events, things like that. We're collabing with Obsessed Garage, Matt Mormon today, as Obsessed Garage clan knows who he is, obviously. And a lot of the Porsche folks know who you are, too. I think a lot of your listenership and followership spills over to what we're doing.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so, I mean, you being... having your Porsches and things like that too. I think a lot of our guys are some of your customers even, so that makes total sense on that end. But yeah, we're just going to have a good talk today, so let's get rolling.
Cool.
So let's rewind a little bit. I know it's been some time. So you had your .1 GT3 RS, made the move to a .2.
Yep.
I know when we talked before, you were on the fence about it. You were saying well, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it, and then you made the move. What really pushed you over that edge when you did decide to go to the .23 RS?
I was at, I don't know if it was spring or fall. I don't remember. I think it was fall. I was at Fall Smokies GT, Fall Smokies GT event, and I had done a bunch of back-to-back videos of GT4s, 991.1, manual .2 GT3, and then a .2 RS. I drove Ryan's green .2 RS, and that's what did it. So as I was sitting in the lodge, because I'd always stay like an extra day, and I just started searching for cars that were available, and I wanted a white one, and it's kind of like when I got my .1 Sapphire Blue GT3, it was spec'd the way I wanted, but I would have chickened out. And so this one had lizard green interior, which I would have kind of wanted, but would have chickened out when it came time. If I built it on my own, and it's so they
talked
had
yourself out of it basically, and it would have been like.
So there was a 1,000 mile, like a 1,050 mile one at Gas Garage right near where my buddy lived that I was staying.
Okay.
So
they're in Alpharetta, right?
Yeah, so I drive out of the mountains, I go to Alpharetta and stay there, and then I have a company come pick up my car, and then I Uber down to the airport. And so what I did is I drove my car over to Gas Garage, and Tony wasn't there, but a bunch of the guys, we just hit it off, and next thing I know, I went back, got my GT3, washed it, brought it back the next morning, did the trade, lost a freaking $1 zillion, and I don't know how everybody always makes money on GT cars. I always lose money, lots of money, and then traded the car. Like it was like I had time. Actually, I changed my flight. I had like 4 hours to kill and then I bought a car in that 4 hours. So I changed my flight to the next day, came, traded the car, did the deal, and then my guy came and picked up a different car instead of that car. So that's how it happened. It was because I drove the cars in the mountains, the PDKS tuning, the PDKS difference, and then the what I didn't like as much the suspension difference, but just the engine, because the .2 is a sort of RSR inspired bespoke version of the engine instead of the .1 is not is not really a special engine in comparison to the .2, and so that combined with I did Adam LZ's detail and saw like carbon fiber rear.
So you got in to get like real intimate with it, huh?
Yeah. And so I made this really irresponsible financial decision to do it.
Plus, you couldn't let LZ, like some young punk, like have something like that, right?
It's like he sees Adam with his.
He's like, this is not happening. LZ's not going to have one.
So there are many things that I actually prefer of the .1 over the .2. Having had both cars, but the .2 is a little bit more. It's kind of like 997.1 versus .2. It's just a little bit. It's a better car. car.
Yeah.
It's like they fix
Just more refined.
Yeah, they fix the finger follower wear issue, and so you really have an engine that you don't have to really consider. Oiling is proper and fixed, and the dry sump and all. So it's just a better platform, I think, if you were going to keep it for a while.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are some of the things that you miss about your .1 though? Like you said, I know you said suspension, but what else?
I actually like the look better. I like the front bumper better. I like it. I feel like it flowed better. The .2 is more aggressive.
Yeah, Nakaducks and all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't like the Nakaducks as much. I don't. It's like the front bumper is the main thing. Is that it's just the front bumper looks
sweeping,
cleaner. It's not as aggressive. I actually like that the fender vents didn't stick out.
Yeah.
I think the rear bumper looks a little better on the .1, but the tail lights, of course, are nicer on the .2. Just some subtle difference. The biggest thing for me is the intake ducts on the side, and the side splitter is rounded and kind of bulbous looking on the .2, and I just think that the .1 is a little cleaner looking that way. And I actually liked how the .1 handled better.
Okay.
The .2 is clear in the right hands, is superior, but in my hands,
got it.
The .1 isn't as bouncy. Because what do? They soften the sway bars and increase the spring rate on the .2.
Yeah, the rebound on it is.
And so the thing that transformed the .2 was a DSC controller for me. It made it feel more like a .1.
Okay.
And so I could tell when I come into a corner, I load the car, and then apex, enter, exit, just on the street. I felt like out of control in a .2 before the DSC controller.
Okay.
Where a .1, I felt like I could just squat and go.
It was planted. Okay.
And so the
feels
suspension change just felt more bouncy, and I think that's sort of the general consensus. It feels more complicated.
Okay.
And so that the DSC controller transformed the car for me.
Nice.
And made the .2 and all the advantages of the .2 a better overall car at the end of the day.
And give you more confidence in it, basically, to kind of where your driving was with the .1. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so those are like the biggest subtle differences. Of course, the PDK speed is like you wouldn't think it could get any faster, but it is.
Yeah. Which is insane because in the .1 it's fast.
Yeah.
Because you let us graciously drive your .1 too.
Yeah.
And it was insane. And when I drove it, I think the first time I said to myself, when people were crying about wanting a manual in that car, and I'm like, I don't see how you could, because it spins up so fast. You couldn't. I know for the fun's sake, I get that, but I mean, it just felt like you couldn't keep up even when you were on full tilt paddle shifting it.
Right. Yeah, and some of the things they do to the manual, the .2 GT3 is lift shift and things like that, and then auto rev max and stuff. So it's still more manageable than you'd think, revving at 9,000 RPMs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't get, like, if the GT3 RS was available in a manual, I wouldn't buy it. Yeah. I would buy the PDKS.
Yeah.
And then, but if, like, let's say 992 RS came in a manual, which I don't think it will. I would probably try to keep my 991 and get a 992 and do that in a manual and keep.
Got it. Yeah,
that's what I would. That's the only way I would do it, because I think I would have to have a PDK GT car in my life.
Yeah,
which is really odd for me to say.
Yeah,
considering I'm not a track guy, I'm not worried about ultimate speed, and so. It's one of those things that's like, well, I don't, the PDK doesn't really benefit me, but it's so good, and you're in such control. You can bounce it off the rev limiter. You can pull both paddles to, rev the car. And so all of the pluses of a manual are still there, and you're still super engaged.
I'll back you up on that, because I was a manual car guy all the way.
Sure.
And then I drove a couple .1 GT3s, and I fell in love with it, to be honest with you. I was like, this is really compliant and really good. Like, you had a Sapphire, I think, .1, didn't you? And that really transformed my thinking behind it, right? Where I was like, it's either manual or nothing for me. But I got in that car, I'm like, you go sit sometimes in traffic in it, wherever you're going to your destination, and you sit in it and you're like, this is actually really nice.
Well, and I think part of it, it's a different kind of engagement. You can hear there's no packing in the clutches, so you can hear like the clinging and clanging, and and you in order to sort of combat that, you train yourself to pull the paddles as you approach a stop, to engage neutral, and so I just kind of naturally was engaged with an automated manual transmission like that, unlike other cars like like the DSG in my Audi S4 I had. It's just not even the my M5, my F10 M5 had what's the BMW version?
DCT.
The DCT, and it's just not. It's much more numb.
Yeah,
and the DCT is a pretty good. It's about as good as it gets outside of PDK.
Yeah.
And even PDK so the non-S version, so the non-GT version, PDK is kind of boring.
Yeah.
Because it will, although I don't think it kicks down, like it won't kick down a gear, but it'll inject some some limits on you.
I'll agree with that too. I think if a PDK in a GT car is a totally different world compared to some of the other variants, like an S variant or something like that.
Yep.
Because if you've never driven one before, you really need to drive it, because it really is totally different. Like you're saying, it's just one of those things where it's learning a different style of driving, really.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And if you like that engagement, which all of us do because we're all enthusiasts, it's a neat thing to like learn, where you go, oh, this is something I haven't really experienced before. This is totally different. This is really cool.
I think where it gets gratifying is because when the pull happens, the shift happens. It's not so close to that. That's where you're almost getting that manual sensation in a way, because you are controlling it. It doesn't feel like it's hit it and then wait. I think that's some of it.
Yeah, and I think having control is key for me. Is that I'm in control of what the car is doing. Let me money shift it kind of thing, and that I don't know why that's important, but it just seems like it's important to me.
Yeah, I mean it's important that you know yourself too, as far as like that works for you.
Yeah, and another thing is that the auto mode is so bad that like you never like fall back on that crutch.
Yeah,
like it's because it's geared to keep fuel economy under control.
Yeah, it'll put you in its highest gear. It's like
seventh gear. Like going 20 miles.
It's the worst. You're absolutely right. You're like, why would anyone ever drive it like this?
And then if you put it in PDK Sport mode, then it's like it's just wound, because that's designed really for the track.
Exactly.
And so you never use either one of those, and so it's like it doesn't, like I don't even register. Then I get in the car and it's just right automatically in a manual. Down to drive a manual. Like I don't even think about it. Like I wouldn't even know how to not do that kind of thing. And then it's magical that you can still shift. That's a Pruninger thing. I was just
about to ask you that.
Yeah.
Now I know a lot of other guys that like doing that. Do you bump shift at all, or are you a paddle only guy?
At least 75% of the time I'm I'm
okay.
hand on top and shifting that way. Nice. And then when you're spiritedly driving, then I'm hands on the wheel and paddle shifting. But almost exclusively shifting here when I'm driving around town. Nice. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's stout, and you can feel the click and all of that. So unlike the BMW, you got this dainty little DCT shifter.
Little clicks.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that the 992 has still a larger shifter. They don't have the 992.
Yeah, they don't have the little razor looking thing.
Yeah, because that would be stupid.
That's what the one he was driving with Harris. He had the big one because he likes doing that. That's why I brought that up, because he likes to bump shift it too. Like he doesn't actually like to use the paddles. He likes to bump shift it. So it has the standard shifter, like the normal meaty one, where it's not this like little dainty
little digital thing. Yeah.
So that's the nice part about getting the 992 GT3. If you get one, even in PDK, it's not going to have the little weird looking thing that the S's have and the turbos and all that stuff. So,
and that's the thing. Like that's why a turbo has no appeal to me, a modern turbo, because you can't get a manual and it's not PDK-S.
Yeah,
it's the traditional PDK, and it's not as because it's. I think they put the PDK-S in there. It's louder and clunkier, and the S is supposed to be like the pinnacle of their executive level type car, and it just doesn't appeal to me at all. The getting a turbo, because you can only get traditional PDK, and now if you could get a turbo S and a manual, that would appeal to me quite a bit more.
Yeah, I think it would appeal to a lot of people. Actually, I think there'd be a lot more buyers in that arena if that was an option. And I think it should be. I mean, I know from maybe a cost perspective, from a business perspective, it might not be very lucrative for them to do that. But I mean, if you're selling a pinnacle car, like that's their halo car essentially.
You're not selling many, so there's no point.
Yeah. So it's like, why not offer that? If you're going to drop $220 on it, spec'd out. If I want a manual, why won't you let me get a manual? If you offer it, it's not like they have to redevelop one. They have one. It could go in there.
And that's where I think that the turbo, if the turbo goes electric, and if they improve the tech in it, and that would be a cool electric vehicle to have.
Yeah.
So just take the comfort executive level Turbo S and just making an electric car in a 911. Now, I'd be sold out on having a car like that. If it had autopilot and things like
I think
Tesla
I think
does.
we're going to see one eventually.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is when then I would want it to be softer and more comfortable, and it's like the Taycan. I just don't.
Because then it turns more into your Grand Tour, what it should be, right? Like where you're just like, it has your autopilot, it has your comfort, like you got.
It doesn't tear your face off on a
exactly.
Yeah, so even though I'm driving around town, I still want a GT car. I don't want a turbo.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking so highly of PDK. You just recently got delivery of your GT4 that we saw that you took delivery on it. You had some of your fans come and hang out and all that stuff, watch you take delivery. And also last year you were kind of on the fence. I remember we kind of asked you like, okay, GT4. At that time it was allocations are going to be coming out soon. Anybody interested in it? And I remember you were saying, well, I had an allocation on the last one, but I turned it down. I didn't take it on the .1, the first gen. And you weren't sure if you were going to do it on this one. So what kind of made you want to get this one?
I did want a car to drive around daily. Driving the 981 GT4 in the mountains, like the precision of it, mid-engine. When the new one, when it was announced, I said, well, if I can get one and I can get it at MSRP, I would do it. I'd spec one out, and I got one.
Nice.
And so that really was all that went into it. The issue is, of course, it kind of makes my E92 M3 a little obsolete for me.
Yeah.
I have no desire to grab the keys to that. It's almost like an obligation, which is really odd because that's one of my unicorn cars.
You love that car.
Yeah, and so. I'm having a difficult time now. I've worked my way back up to 6 cars again, and so I'm
back when you were trying to downsize.
Yeah, and so now I'm likely I'll end up with a GT4, GT3, and that was the big question for me was, are they too much the same?
Yeah,
do you have two cars that are pretty much the same? And this sound a little
verdict.
Well, this will sound a little jaded, but I've gotten to the point where a GT4 is like the minimum pedestrian that I want, right? And then the GT3. See, the GT3 to me is an event. I'm going to get in that. It's like an event to drive it that day. It's a privilege. The GT4, for whatever reason, even though it feels very similar, is like I wouldn't have a problem putting 50,000 miles in the GT4, where for whatever reason it just doesn't seem right to do that to my GT3 RS.
It's a Cayman thing.
I think so. Yeah. It's
stigma.
It's still $130,000, $120,000 car, so I shouldn't have that feeling. But I just don't care about it as much.
I can relate to that because we got a lot of flack from the trolls when we reviewed the GT4, the new one. Like when we were given a brand new one, and they're like, "Where's the emotion at?" And I was like,
It's a bit more.
I'm not sad. You got the real emotion from me. It wasn't that emotional of a drive because." And again, maybe we're jaded because we've driven different type of level cars, and we've driven the RSs, and we've driven stuff at that razor's edge, and so I'm giving a fair assessment. My assessment on it, like you said, it was very pedestrian. I got in it, and I was like, this didn't really wow me. And not saying it's not a great car at all. Like I'm not trying to say that, but I'm saying like based off of cars I've driven, like where it falls in that category, it wasn't up there where I was jumping out of my pants to like tell people so much about it. Like, it was amazing. Oh my God, you guys got to go out and rush out and buy this thing. It just didn't, and everything we do is real about it. So like,
I'd say the 981 was a better experience, but that we drove that with the manuals. That may have been the difference there. But I felt like I still feel like they need more torque. I feel like there's a torque thing for me, but a manual would probably make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, it's complicated because the GT4 in every sense is an aspirational car for like for anybody who hasn't had a GT3 experience, and in many ways the GT4 is a better car. It rotates differently, weight transfers differently. I actually really enjoy the tall gearing in the manual. The only thing that's odd is the seating position, everything feels identical to a GT3. All the keys, the radio interface, everything's the same. And so it's like you're in the same cockpit, but yet, and that was my fear, is it different enough? I've become so accustomed and so appreciative of the whole Porsche driving experience that it's made other cars like I ask myself, why am I doing this? I like my M3, but I love my GT4, so if I had to choose, if you gave me the choice, I'd choose the GT4 every time. And so to me, the GT4 has become this sort of ultimate daily driver for me,
all around
for what I do. I'm not hauling 2x4s around. And so if you're going to the grocery store, or I'm driving to the garage here, and I'm loading up with the microfiber towels that I washed at my house, a GT4's got plenty of storage. It's got a front seat, it's got a trunk, it's got a front trunk. I've got tons of room. I could load that thing up with tons of stuff. And I even put like some weather stripping that was like 8 feet long and through the car.
Nice.
And so it's super practical. Like if I was 24 and that was my only car, I could rock
it. Could
that
work, easily. It could work, I agree with that. And that I will say that for that category you're putting it in, I would say that for a lot of people, if you're thinking of it as okay, I'm not because it's not special or whatever, but it is special, but you can daily it too. I think that's another element that maybe an RS or even a GT3, I never feel that way in those cars. I feel like you said, like this car is a weapon for this event. Like as opposed to like a GT4 is like, and that's one of the things we did say when we drove it. I said, you could use this car every day. It's super compliant. It's super nice. The one thing about it, like we didn't have aftermarket exhaust because it was a factory one, but I was like, the pros and the cons, if you're seeking a GT car and you want to make it loud, you can go do that. There's plenty of products to do that with. But if you like it the way it is and you daily it, it is quiet enough to putz around town and not draw too much attention to yourself. So
yeah, you could certainly do that. It's a lot to me. It's a lot of fun to drive that car. I have more fun driving that than I do the GT3. It's just I mean, part of it's the manual, part of it's the mid-engine feel.
Well, the manual transmission, that thing is amazing. It's so nice.
Yeah, it's great. I was thinking there's a very high probability that I would sell that car, do a giveaway or raffle or something like that, and no, I'm gonna keep it. You're
like, I'll get rid of the BMW before I get rid of this one.
Yeah, I think it's very likely that the BMW goes. I don't know that it'll go anytime soon. I'm kind of giveawayed out because I got another one for the Civic coming. I'm doing a garage giveaway right now, and then we're doing the Civic here in a few weeks. So the only reason I haven't sold the M3 at this point is I'm going to have parted out, so I'm going to put it back to stock and then sell the Brembos and sell the Eventury Plenum and sell the seats and all that stuff separately. I'll get a lot more out of it. That's the main reason why I haven't done it, but I do like that car a lot. I'm going to move into my new house, and then the parking situation there aren't as many trees and stuff, and so I'm going to have a 3-car garage. I'm going to have it's basically a 4-car porte-cochere thing, and then I have an asphalt driveway where there aren't trees around. So for a car to sit outside is not as big of a deal. Like if I sit a car outside at my house now, there's acorns dropping down and stuff. It just gets destroyed. And so we'll see. So if I have GT4, GT3 RS, M3 in the 3-car garage, and then if the Model 3 sits outside or parks on the porte-cochere, maybe that'll be fine. I'm not sure. Because the Civic will be leaving in a few months, so I'll be back down to 5 cars again here shortly.
Gotcha. Yeah, let's talk about that for a little bit, because I think it would be nice to revisit that, since we did talk about Civic Si the last time we were with you, and that was 18 months ago. So it's ironic, actually, that you happen to have one that you're doing on your giveaway, and it's the ultimate Civic Si, essentially. Like, you've gone through it, fine-tooth comb, pretty much, as you described. If we were younger and we had a pile of money to throw at it, that's what you've done. Was it always that when you bought it, or did it kind of slippery slope into that? Did you know you were going to go that ham on it, like right at...
Yeah. I didn't buy that car with any thought that I would like it. It's terrible. It's a Honda Civic. It was cool when I was 19. It's still kind of cool now, but cool for what it is, not to go out and drive it. It's terrible.
Yeah.
The seating position's terrible. My head is touching the roof. I didn't remember any of that.
Not meant to be
reaching down to shift it. And so much like, I feel like I was very mature when I was young from a modification perspective. I wanted JDM parts. I wanted to keep it simple. But, I didn't have an infinite budget.
Yeah.
I made a lot of money for a 20-year-old at the time. I was making, $50,000 to $60,000 bucks.
Which is a killing.
But that's not enough to buy any, $130,000 worth of stuff that I put on the car. And so, what I didn't want to do is, I've never been big into wide fenders or body kits or big modifications where you're cutting and reshaping and fabricating. So I've never been into fabricating. I've always been into this idea that I could order it, wait for UPS, unbox it, and then I could fumble through bolting it on.
Same.
And hopefully not ruin it, and it's still to this day, we did an engine swap, but it's really an unbolt bolt in.
Yeah.
And so I had John at LHT do it, because I don't know how to do clutches, and I'm sure I could figure it out.
Yeah.
And he could do anything by watching YouTube videos, but I just didn't want to do that.
They're good at it too, so just let them do it.
I wanted the car to be a world-class bolt-on car, and I can't take credit. It's my friend from the rag company, Anthony. He suggested I do this and planted the idea. Said, why don't you buy your Civic from back in the day and do all this stuff? And so I said, well, if I can find one, so I just kind of put the feelers out.
Yeah.
And if a really nice one showed up, because I also I don't want to do a restoration.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to try to track down window seals and
start with the best one you could, right?
Right, and that's the part that if you're a regular, if you're younger, or if you haven't had a bunch of success in life, it's hard to understand.
Yeah.
That why would you buy this masterpiece and then change it?
Yeah.
First, a Honda Civic, if you've ever driven one, is terrible. The whole advantage of that thing is all the parts and things you can do to modify
exactly.
it. And to try to find pristine stuff, I would have spent $100,000 just trying to get it to where it was if I just bought it that way.
Exactly. Plus, the time and all stuff like that too. It's like at our age, you don't have the time to go. Like when you're young, you feel like you have infinite time, right? You're going to live forever. You have tons of time to make money. You're like, oh, I'll build this thing from scratch. You're like, I don't have 3 years to build this thing.
Yeah, and I don't want it to take that long. I want it in and out, and I don't want to be, trying to Bondo stuff and send it to painters and all that stuff. And so I found the cleanest example I could. I bought it, paid more for it than I should have. And I bought it for 20. It's funny. What did I buy it for? I bought it for $23,500, and so I paid the partner. So it was a small dealership, but the older guy who was a partner of this little dealership in Iowa, was hoarding a bunch of older Hondas, and he decided now was the time. He's pretty smart.
It's a good move.
And so I called him. He said, whatever you want. Just tell me what you want.
Yeah.
Because they were going to put it on an auction. I'll bring a trailer. And I was like, no, I want to buy it now.
Yeah, get it before it goes there. Yeah.
Terrible.
So there was a video on YouTube that was unlisted that a follower found because they knew I was looking for the car, sent me the unlisted. So it wasn't private. It was just unlisted.
Okay.
So it was public unlisted.
Okay.
I saw the video. I found the dealer. I called him. They only made that video because they'd already started the process to put it on Bring a Trailer. I said, forget that. What do you want?
Yeah.
How much do you want? And so I talked myself into it. So we agreed at 23.5. She's like, done.
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
Wire you the
and then
money,
the partner
let's get
calls
it
me
done.
back and said, I feel a lot better at 25. I said, done.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Like,
Whatever makes you happy.
Can you give me your wiring info so I can at least get you the cash?
I wired on the funds within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Had the car here within a month. And so that that was the process. I don't think the car has probably never seen rain. It's seen more rain here since I've owned it than it has ever. And like the B16, I don't know if you saw it sitting over there. It's freaking beautiful.
Yeah.
It's 27,000 miles on it, 26,000 miles. It looks brand new. And then my dream as a kid was I wanted to do a B18, JDM Type R swap.
Yeah.
I know I could do a K swap and do
exactly
things like that.
what all the other guys are doing. But
I know it's better.
That wasn't period correct for then.
Right. And so I was trying to find this balance between period correct and what I would have wanted. Yeah. And so I don't know what wheels I wanted, and all the offset information and stuff doesn't really exist anymore. And so I just started buying whatever wheels I could get my hands on. I still don't love any of them, but I can't. I really want like an OG set of flat face E37s in gunmetal gray, but you just can't get them. They don't make them anymore.
Exactly.
Everybody wants a 8-inch wide wheel, and they want to run some crooked offset and some bull crap or some crooked
crazy,
camber
and all this. You're like, I don't want that.
So it's really hard to get what you want, and so now I'm 138,000 into it. But I have a bunch of wheels and a bunch of redundant parts and things
like
sitting
8
around.
sets of wheels, right? You said something like that. Yeah.
But I mean, in literally a weekend, a John from LHT could put that car back to stock, and you could part it out. And so the winner's going to win the car, and then so
get a couple pallets of parts.
Yeah, we're going to do it February 15th to March 31st, and I'll pick the winner on whatever April 2nd or something like that, and then they're gonna I'll ship it to wherever it needs to go, U.S. and Canada.
That's awesome.
And hopefully someone in Hawaii doesn't win.
Someone's gonna get an awesome car though. Like it's, especially if you're into retro JDM, like we talked about before. Like when we were young, I think we were roughly the same age, so we were that same age when that car came out, and man, we thought that was it. Like at that point, there was no we had dreams, but it wasn't like a reality where you're like, oh, I'm going to be in a Porsche right now, or I'm going to be in this. Like, that wasn't even on the radar. That was like,
I didn't even know at that point that I'd ever have a Porsche in my life.
Yeah, same.
Or,
like it wasn't even in the distance a glimmer or anything. It was just like at that time you just wanted to have the best thing that you thought was cool, which I thought that was cool too, and it was like, let's make this the best thing that I can have right now.
And then you'd get the base plant with aspirations to do all these superchargers and all these different things. I'd be shopping all the forums and looking for used parts and things like that. And you would, I'd like just paid off my credit card, and then I'd buy a Comptech exhaust, and I'd pay off my credit card, and then I'd get a strut tower brace, and then then the body of work. You bought the car for $12,000 in year 2000. And by the time 2002 rolled around, I had probably another $20,000 to $30,000 in stuff into the car, and then I sold it for $12,000.
Exactly.
Because I didn't know how, like, some of the parts we did ourselves, and some I'd taken to a shop, and so it was like such a daunting task. I didn't keep all the stock parts proper, and because they were kind of all over the place, and I moved from Pennsylvania to Florida, and I didn't have everything, and so it was one of those things. Like, I'll just get it out of here because I don't know how to do all this.
Then when you had to part stuff out, it was a hassle because shipping on the stuff back then, and then communicating with people, there was no PayPal, reserve funds, any of that stuff. So it was a lot of maybe local sales. Like that was the best it could really. You get on a Honda forum and you're like, all right, hey, I'm in Tampa, or I'm wherever you live, and you're like, I've got these parts for sale, want to come look at them, I'll sell them. And that's pretty much what it was like in the early 2000s.
Yeah. And so I didn't realize how easy it was to do a set of coilovers on a car. And then I got my S2000, we did the coilovers, and then my S2000 I did all myself. And then I parted it out, and so I sort of learned after that first car.
Yeah, it became less intimidating essentially to do.
Some guy got a screaming deal, He bought the car, parted it out, I'm sure, and sold the car for whatever, more than what he paid for.
Yeah, he probably made like a pretty penny on it.
Like I had a dent on the fender that got hit by a football, and I didn't know like how to get a dent removed. It was there was that, and I have to remind myself of that they're young guy. Like we just take for granted what you know now, but you know even washing a car properly and stuff like that, like I take for granted.
100%.
Like how could you be that stupid and not know? Well, we were all young, once poor and stupid.
Yes, I totally agree. I think about that all the time because even like in the Porsche world where new people are coming in, and I'm like, oh yeah, you would never do that. And now I have to think about myself of like what age the person I was talking to. I'm like, well, I'm talking to a 26-year-old.
Right.
And that they don't realize that, you know, even all of this plentiful information's out there, you still have to consume it, right? Even though that the information's there. So I know when I was 26, I wasn't, you know, where I'm at with the mindset of like, even like you said, Washington things or like calculatedly buying parts, right? Like instead of just arbitrarily buying stuff, instead of like, you know, even that matters, like your sequence of where you go through stuff, and you're like, oh, I bought this, but I didn't realize I had to have this part to do that part, and you're like, oh, okay. Like that's a 20-year-old move. That's the stuff I did when I was that age. I was like, what am I thinking?
Yeah, and now I've gotten so much more used to that. Like, you know, I set up to change the oil in the GT4, and I'm ready to go. And it's a little different for me now because I'm taking photos and making videos, and I'm ready to do it. And then I realize I have A40 oil, not C40 oil. And then I realized there's a special tool you need to open the plug. Yeah. And I would have freaked out and been so miserable and angry. And now I've just sort of gotten used to it. I've done that so many times where you don't have the right stuff and you can't get it. And so you ordering, you know, order, wait. And then you don't have the right stuff again, order, wait. And then 6 weeks later you get the project done. That's part of the game. And so the Civic is a reminder to me that like I put a Toyota header on, and it was such a disaster. It took us like 6 hours to do it. And only because we didn't know what we were doing. And then I took it for a test drive and didn't put the dipstick back, and shot oil all over it and ruined, you know, and so it always had these oil drips on it forever.
Yeah.
And so I'm reminded that you know, not everybody understands why I choose to do something a certain way and maybe not go as far. Because when people see this, they're like, you have unlimited funds for this project. Well, there's still a limit. I
was just about to say that. You're like, it may seem that way to you, but there is a limit to this.
Why don't you reupholster the doors in the back seat? I said, you know, there's a limit to. I was planning to do that, but when I saw what it looks like without doing that, knowing how much of a pain that is to go and try to get it there, and then if you ever try to work with an upholstery guy there, you know,
it's a pain. I've done it many times. It's the worst.
And so, like things like that, you have to draw the line somewhere. And so this Civic was a real reminder to me of what the progression has been like.
Yeah, that process.
And so I bought the car with the intent to just buy whatever needed to be bought, wherever I needed to buy it from, and I'll figure out where it ends up. I had no price target. I had no goal. I just had a vision for what it would look like at the end, and it's
at where it's at. Yeah, nice.
The only
thing really good. I mean,
the only thing I don't love the motor mounts, which, you know, are a huge benefit performance wise, but it's such a detriment from a drivability. It's so, you know, you feel all that chassis vibration.
It's rigid.
And I'm not in love with any of the wheels, but I think I'm kind of stuck.
Yeah,
there really isn't. I can keep buying wheels, but they're all going to be just slightly just slightly off.
Not where you really want it at. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, so everything is complete. All I have to do is align it and do a final detail on it, and the car's ready to go to the next owner.
It looks awesome, though. I'll tell you what. Like, it still brings back memories. I see that thing sitting in there, and I just instantly taken back to my 20s. I'm like, yep, I remember when that car was the shit. Where you just are like, you were doing it if you had one of those.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. You know, anybody had an EX, you'd look down your nose at them. You know?
You're right, though, because like even within the brand, they're like, ha. You're like, whatever, dude.
Yeah. And you'd always be apologize. Slow as crap. You know, and other cars were faster. But you're like, you know, you would apologize for the slowness of it with something else, like the drivability or the intake sound or the pure,
or the fact that it can rev up all the way up, right? You're like, well, it's, you know, it's a special engine. It revs all the way up.
Yeah, when your WRX buddy is still leaving you in the dust, you know.
Yeah, you get 10 cars on you, and you're just like, yeah, whatever. It's still cool.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think it's one of those things, too. Maybe that's where Porsches aren't always the fastest thing on the road. Obviously, like when you're in the GT3 RS range, you get it. There's guys that you travel with, like have McLarens. They have like other stuff that can beat the pants off of those, obviously in a straight line. And obviously it's a long stretch of a comparison, but it's almost kind of the similar thing, obviously on different levels. But like with those cars too, where we kind of appreciated it, even back then, our mindset was, well, we liked it for like essentially its engineering. Like what was cool about it. It wasn't because it was the fastest car. That's not why we wanted it. It was cool because it was a well-engineered car for the mass market, essentially, is what it was. And I think Porsche, this is a long reach, but it's some of that. I think maybe our brains are wrapped around that too, and maybe why we ended up gravitating towards Porsche as we got older, because we appreciate the engineering behind it.
The Porsche is the progressive step, so you Honda, BMW, Porsche, it's kind of the progressive step. And to me, I've said this a lot. I don't have a Ferrari, McLaren, Lamborghini desire. I think someday I'll probably end up with a Ferrari, but I doubt that I'll become like I would call myself a Porsche guy, a BMW guy, or former BMW guy, because what they're making now is garbage. But I don't think that I would become a Ferrari guy.
Same.
But who knows? I mean, if you're making $5 million a year and you can buy whatever car you want, maybe that changes.
Yeah, your perspective changes.
I'm not sure.
Maybe. Yeah.
But I feel like even when I wasn't a Porsche level guy, that I was a Porsche guy.
I feel the same way. Like, I think I was always towards that engineering, and I agree with you on the Ferrari stent. Like, I think at some point in my life I'll own a Ferrari, and the reason why I think I'll own one is I'm very historical, I guess, in the sense of like their racing history really appeals to me, even though their cars right now aren't obviously the same thing. But the fact that they have that history, that winning history of racing, and they were birthed out of racing, always kind of appealed to me with Ferrari. I always kind of looked at them that way, and I was like, it's always kind of cool where Enzo Ferrari was racing back in the day, and that was his only goal. Like, it was the other way around, where other people want to sell cars so they can race, and all that kind of stuff. He's like, it's like one of those deals. He's like, well, I just want to race. I don't even want to sell cars. He's like, well, you're bankrupt. So you need to sell some cars if you want to continue to race. And I always thought that was a neat history story. I always
it's a
that.
Passion-led business, which is appealing.
Yeah, and I think that there's a part of Porsche, that's the reason why I like Porsche too, because they were also birthed in racing. They were always, their early Gamoon race 356s and stuff like that. They always wanted to go race their cars, and they wanted to continue to race, but they just came to the market faster as far as like, okay, we need to sell cars if you want to continue this, instead of like wait till we go bankrupt to sell cars. So it was like kind of one of those things. So maybe that's why both of those brands appeal to me. I don't know. I mean, something deep down inside me where I'm like,
it's definitely heritage. I think that it's a history thing for both of them. You can point back and look. They both have long lineages of doing their thing, whether it's racing first or racing and selling cars. I think that's the ability to look at those two, and then they're still doing it today, like they didn't. So. And
then excellence in what they provide as a product, right? Where they don't shortcut something. Where you've heard many stories, even within Porsche, and I'm sure with Ferrari, where they've lost money in development and R&D on a car, but because it was the right way to do it. It didn't matter if they made money on it. They're like, look, we're $1 million in the hole. Like, when they made the 959, every one they lost like $100,000 selling that car. So every time somebody bought one, it cost them $100,000 essentially, but they didn't care, because it was that special of a car to them, and it was that important. I think brands that do stuff like that are unique, I guess.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me about Ferrari is the lack of engineering. And they've gotten better and better over the years, but that is sort of problematic. I just wonder, like, if I buy a 458 Speciale, and if you take care of it, like, I don't think Ferraris do well with regular care. Yeah. Like a regular guy's care. But I question, will a Ferrari do well under the care of someone like myself, who's a bit more discerning when it comes to caring for something? Like, would I end up with dash peeling and worn seats?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I think if meticulous guys own those cars, like all of us are, I think those cars do last a long time. And I didn't do any research on this, but I was telling him just the other day, I saw a 458 for sale with like 76,000 miles on it.
Right.
And I'm like, well, it had to get the mileage somehow.
Yeah.
So somebody's maintaining and driving it. Now,
I wonder
how
what
much
that thing looks
maintenance?
like.
Yeah, how much maintenance had to go into it? I don't know.
Yeah.
But the fact that I saw the number on it as far as like the mileage, the core of it is still there. You know, so it says there's something to that as far as, you know, and I agree with you. I think Ferrari went through a period of that where I want to say in the 80s and even in the 90s where their cars were really fragile, right?
Right. Melty buttons. And,
where
it's beautiful on the outside.
Where they just basically carried through with name only. You know, the car itself was just kind of one of those things. It was like, no, this thing's going to detonate at any time on you. So, you know, essentially driving a bomb around. But I think the car manufacturing as a whole almost forced them in the 2000s to step their game up because everyone around them in the exotic car world was stepping up.
Yeah, really the only Ferrari that appeals to me is a 458 Speciale, you know, and the last of their naturally aspirated.
I like 458s for that same reason.
It'd be hard, though. It's hard to stomach because you can buy a 458 Italia for, you know, 180 grand, 200 grand for a really nice one, or 400 for 370, 380 for a Speciale, but I really want a Speciale.
Yeah.
So then I question, would I rather have the Speciale or would I rather have a 997 4.0?
Yeah.
You know, GT3 RS 4.0, and I think I'd rather have the RS 4.0.
I agree. I know we've talked about that before too. That was your ultimate long term.
That's what I want.
If money, no object happened, that would be showing up type of thing.
Yeah, I'm going to get one for sure.
Yeah.
But I still think, you know, like to me right now, if I was looking for something outside of Porsche, I mean, an R8 or an NSX appeals to me more than even a 458 does.
Mm-hmm. And do you think it may be because of the usability of both of those cars?
100%. Yeah. I would have no fears or qualms.
Because, you know, you could do 100,000 miles on that car and it wouldn't even beat.
Right.
Like it wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah. But I don't know. I do well with the, you know, with the specialness of, and I think, I haven't had a garage in 5 years. I had this garage, but I didn't have a garage at my house, and so I think having a garage is going to change that a little bit too for me. Is that if I can have a car, it can sit there on a trickle charger for a couple of weeks. Because right now I stress out about it being out there. It's out in the darn woods in the pole barn, and there's rodents and
exactly getting after it if they want to,
and there's dust and crap on it, and so I think that might change a little bit if I can have, you know, 3 special cars in the garage, and maybe I'll be a bit more collective, you know, a bit more of a collector.
I vote for the 4.0. That's on my vote. If you're going to do that, I vote for that because that is really, really special car. That is.
It stinks that I wish, in many ways, I wish I was, you know, 15 years older, because I would have bought all these cars. Like I would have been a part of the buying them instead of buying them now later when they're, you know, $500,000.
I agree.
And so I would have, you know, and the appreciation would have happened. And so now,
because you would have been buying at MSRP or close to.
Yeah, I'd been buying a new car spec from the dealer, and then, you know, I'd be the guy that's selling it to me.
Yeah,
you know,
you'd be the one selling it for $700.
Right, exactly. And so it kind of stinks, and it stinks that there aren't any cars coming out that will. It doesn't appear that there's anything.
I agree.
That has anything like that.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, think about it. There's nothing.
No.
You know, there's no. I mean, I guess maybe a TDF. You know, a 488 TDF or something, but
it's still not a manual car. You know, that's the nice thing about the 4.0. It's a manual. It's got all of the special sauce. You know, it's a special run. They made so few of them.
But I have a real hard time of not ripping off all the stickers and you know and you know, getting rid of the red mirrors and stuff like that. I'd have a hard time like not doing that.
RSing it essentially.
Yeah. I would probably do that just to stick it to people.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it would make it even more unique, to be honest with you, because there's not any 4.0s.
Everybody would be afraid to
touch
modify
it.
I'd put exhaust on it.
Yeah,
you know, and that's really all you need to do, and then put the cage in it in the back, and then rip off all the stickers and color match the mirrors.
That'd be neat.
Put different wheels on it.
Yeah,
I'm on board. Let's see it.
Yeah.
People are like, it's
And people are like, well, why'd you buy that car? Why didn't you just buy the same argument with the Civic? Why did you buy a really nice Civic? Why didn't you buy it?
Because I wanted it.
Yeah.
That's why I bought it, okay?
I just think if you live life based on resale,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can't
Can't
do it.
you don't want to ruin it. I wouldn't buy it and repaint it.
Yeah, of course not.
But
all the stuff you're doing, you can put that back to the way it was.
Yeah.
I had the same. I think it's maybe generational because I was going to touch on it when you were talking about the Civic. Everything I do, even modded now to any cars, any of the Porsches I own, can be undone without any like detriment to the car. Meaning like if somebody was like, well, I like it, but it's not stock. I'm like, it can be stock in 2 days.
Yeah.
If that's what you want.
This fabrication is just not my thing. You know, I don't want to be, cutting
You don't
stuff.
want to be and then you're left with that custom. And does everybody like that? Is that somebody,
Mm-hmm.
the next person going to want to?
Well, I think you're really changing the DNA of what the car is when you start to do that. Like, and I think then it becomes something else. And I know there's a whole crowd of people who like that, but for me, that just doesn't really appeal. Where you just taking something and now it's not even that anymore. It's so far from that.
Yeah, and I wonder if I do an air-cooled car someday, because then you are going to likely, do some fabrication,
stuff,
some more sophisticated like interior fabrication, stuff like that. Modifying the dash and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think I'd still be inclined to pull apart the OE stuff, put it in a box, and then buy another piece and modify it. Like with the Civic, if I was going to recover the door cards. Part of the reason why I never did it is because I was going to get another set of door cards, and then I just was having a hard time finding ones. I really wanted some new ones, and I found one but not the other. And in order to do that, then I'd have the originals. I can just put it back together.
I imagine if, in my mind, knowing what I know about you, if you were to do an air-cooled car, you would do Matt's version of a Singer. Like that's how nice it would
and that's why I'm not doing it, because it's I can't I can't do it, and I'd be better off just buying a Gunther Works or a Singer or something like that, already done.
Exactly.
And even then, I'm going to get a Singer. I'm going to like it for 3 weeks, and then see you later.
See ya. Kick it down the road.
And that's part of the reason why I haven't done it. The thing that would be neat is, again, if I had a huge garage and I had a rotisserie and I could, kind of learn some of the things. So buy like a not so nice car. That's where maybe I would buy one that wasn't rusted, but one that I didn't spend 180 grand on, that I'd feel comfortable ripping apart.
Yeah.
And so that's where I struggle with, because I don't know that I would enjoy. I want the $180,000 version, and I still want to rip it apart.
I still want to,
And, so
and then it starts to not make sense.
It's probably the part you're not.
Again, it goes back to if you were 15 years older.
Yeah.
No one wants to be older, but it's one of those things that if I was 15 years older, I would have ridden a much different wave.
Yeah. I think so. I think, and I think it's strange too, because like you see that too. I think about that time. I was like, man, I missed this all by like a decade. Like I missed it all by a decade. Like thinking about all that stuff, like the position I should have been in to do all of those things.
Right.
And I'm like, man, if I was just,
it's just sad that there really aren't cars that I want.
Yeah, and it's not really going that way, right? So like it's almost kind of, if you want something like the 4.0, you really have to go to those boutiques now that you already mentioned, Singer, Gunther Works. You almost have to turn back the clock to these boutique builders to even get that feel anymore, because you can see the future. It's coming. It's going to be EV, and that's where it's going to be. And we're going to get out of a lot of this motorsporty feel type of stuff where a lot of these cars we're in love with, because we're these enthusiasts, these gearheads that like the engineering and all that kind of stuff. And the newer stuff is engineering too, but it's different. It's not this mechanical engineering, right? It's all this EV engineering and high tech stuff. And
there'll be a generation
stuff you
that doesn't
like.
care about anything.
Stuff
I like high tech stuff. I mean, I like the Taycan, so I'm a fan.
I mean, it's a neat car, but it just doesn't get my juices going. Like I feel it's just very like pod-like when I get in it, almost like, I know this is the best way to describe it. It's almost kind of movie-esque. You get in it and it's like, it's not really an event. I know I've driven them and it's super fast and it's unbelievably capable, and it does these amazing things that physics that it shouldn't be able to do for its weight and size and all those things. And I can appreciate that because I'm a logical person, but at the same time, it doesn't get like the inside fire going when I get in that car. It doesn't get me like, like, man. And like, how it is. You've driven the GT cars. You get out and your hands are like this. You're like,
Dude.
They're the last, cars that and that's why I'm going to end up having a bunch of Porsches, because they're the last ones left, and we'll see how long they can hang on, you know. I think Preuninger's years are limited.
I agree.
And at least you can still, you can pull the particulate filter off the cars now. You can still do that. At some point, you may not be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to, like the NSX is cool, where it's augmented. It's got electric and
more of a hybrid.
Yeah, I still think GT cars still have some time, but I wish that there were more. I mean, the Supra is encouraging. The new Supra I think is really cool, very tunable. It sounds good, but there really aren't. In the back in the in the 2000s and 90s, there were dozens of cars, aspirational cars, dozens of cars that you would want. And now, I think they're all going to continue to appreciate massively. So I think you're going to see a massive transfer of wealth from all the hot rods that nobody wants. None of us want. Our entire generation wants nothing to do with any of those. And so especially the Duesenbergs, like the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, all those cars are going to be worthless. Other than the few museum pieces.
Yeah, I was going to say they're going to be dust magnets. That's all they're going to be.
And because there'll be a very small percentage of like old souls that still like them. But the demand is going to, the Barrett Jackson and Meekums of the future will be all Supras and Type Rs and air cooled Porsches and
all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's generational, right? It's only makes sense. I mean, not to sound morbid, but those people are going to pass and they're going to move on. We're getting older and we're aging. As we all aspirate to hopefully make more money as we age, that's what we gravitate towards. So just naturally, as you indicated, that money of wealth is going to go towards those cars. And if you're holding a stable full of those, you're going to be either in the wealth or happy to own those because you're driving them. So it's either or. So if you decide to sell them, you're going to make some good money, or if you keep them, you're going to be like the king. So
yeah, it's one of those interesting things that this could be a time where the stuff that I've always wanted in the past always lost money, and now maybe the things that as you mature, the things you want have more future value to it. It's shocking that I was bidding on another version of the Civic I almost paid $50,000 for it. And to me that wasn't that big of a stretch. If something you want, and there aren't a lot of them, and the car only sold for $19,000 when it was new, and adjusted for inflation it'd be 30.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, to pay $20,000 over for a car that you'd want. I mean, think about what classic cars were selling for $1 million that had a sticker of 3,000.
Exactly.
And but I think that wealth transfer will happen, and that all those old cars that had value that all these people are sitting on are going to be basically worthless.
I agree. I totally agree with you. And I think it's already kind of starting. I think.
Yeah.
I think it's already kind of starting. I don't think we have to.
Who's going to want a Corvair? A 65 Corvair.
Exactly.
There'll be some like a Barracuda that holds on to a Hemi
But
Cuda.
they have been, and that's the thing. They've been the pinnacle, and those are the limiteds, and those.
Yeah, and so those will still, like I'd take one.
Yeah, exactly. Almost kind of like who wants a 32 Ford Fleetwood sedan in like mint condition and like everything on about it's perfect. That car might have carried some weight with the baby boomer stuff, but like for us, we're like, get it out of here.
If you gave it to me, I wouldn't even want it.
No. I wouldn't even want, what would I do? I don't have the space for it. I wouldn't even let you transport that to me.
Yeah.
I'd be like, no, just keep it where you're at. Can
I pay you to not give this to me?
Yeah.
I don't even want to pay to register.
I totally agree with that. I'm just like, I mean, you can go sell it. Like, don't even like.
Right. like Jay Leno's collection, I mean, that will be worthless.
Yeah, exactly. And
notice that, the P1 is worth more than anything there.
Yeah.
Almost everything combined. Stuff like that sort of the pinnacle of analog is what now is valuable. And then maybe at some point when fossil fuels are so complicated and so difficult to get, maybe like all the cars that we love lose value too. It's, it ebbs and flows.
I think that'll happen at some point, but hopefully we'll be done and gone before that happens. So it'll be good on that aspect. But I think you're absolutely hit the nail on the head with that, because you think about it for a minute, where I remember like even when we were young, like, well, because we were like JDM guys or Eurocar guys, like we were even changing the tide back then, because there was still a pool even that time, like where there was the muscle car guys, you know, remember them from high school, and, you know, it's like, oh, well, I got a Fox body, you got a V8, you're still, you know, you got that Ricer car or whatever. And like, that was when it was starting, the very beginning, that divide.
I was one of those people.
That was the divide, like when it started, like back then, like in the 90s, where people were like, okay, well, you know, and then you have Fast and Furious comes out and it bursts a whole generation of people of wanting different cars instead of just V8s. And
yeah, because 90s was Nopey and then that sort
Hot
of transitioned to HIN
and all that kind of stuff.
So the early 2000s, Fast and Furious and Hot Import Nights had already sort of started that. I'm just using that as a style, but but you know, it's where the sort of the American car, big V8 muscle, then transitioned into smaller compact tuner cars, and then transitioned into, you know, all these different subcultures of, you know, the JDM culture, and then, you know, but the American car culture never died. It's been sort of most consistent out of all.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Out of all the, you know, all the tuner stuff. About, you know,
but I remember even some of those V8 guys even talking back then. They're like, "Oh, this is a fad. This will wear off." Talking about JDM cars, and they've been able to stand the test once they started to get popular in the 90s.
Yeah, it's interesting that the millennials love our cars. That's like their favorite cars.
I know.
Part of it is drift and the ability to, you know, chop them up and do that kind of that drift culture, but. You know, it's fascinating how many, like, I probably have more people following that Civic that weren't even alive.
Yeah.
Than you know. So there's two demographics. There's the people that are like us.
Yeah, the nostalgias
that either had one or wanted one, and, you know, in their 30s and 40s, or you have like 18, 19-year-olds that, like, that's their dream car.
Exactly.
Well, I think it still goes to, it was semi-obtainable back then, and it's remained the same route. And so you've kind of had this, you still get that new wave of,
I freaking tell these kids, you need to get better dreams, man. It sucks.
Exactly. But we were just as guilty, though. Like, I was guilty about that stuff. I had dumb dreams too when I was young. I was just like, man, and then, like, maybe the pinnacle at that time, maybe when I was like 18 or 19, was like something JDM related with a turbo on it, maybe a Supra or something like that. That was the real dream car, right? But like, even at that time, I couldn't afford a twin turbo Supra, but I wanted one. You know,
mine was an M3.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted.
Nice. Yeah, those are awesome back then.
Yeah, I wanted an M3. I wanted a OBD1, you know, a 95 E36 M3. And my drug dealer friend got one, paid cash for it.
And you're like, man, I want one.
Yeah. And then you know, the E46 came out, and I went and I wanted to finance one so badly. And so I'm like, well, maybe I would get a 330.
Yeah.
And luckily, I never did anything stupid like that. I stayed Honda until I could reasonably
I was
afford.
dumb. In 03, I financed an E46 M3. I had one.
Yeah.
I loved it when I had it, but man, I was broke as a joke.
$700 a month.
I was broke as a joke, man. No kidding.
Yeah.
Dude, like, not accumulating wealth, basically spending everything I had just to have that car.
Yeah, I almost did it many times, and then I, you know, went the S2000 route, which was, you know, a couple hundred, you know, maybe $400 a month less. And
it was a smart move.
They had maintenance too, so
yeah, that was the smart. I did love it when I had it, but it was eventually, like, here we are, right? Like 17 years later, I still don't have that. I got rid of that car. I traded it in. I got rid of it, and I paid out my ass to get, you know, I got taken on it when I traded it in, because they're like, oh, well, it's old now. Like,
there's black book value. Enjoy.
Yeah.
So I wonder, I may be making a transition here in life, and that I may, you know, I've always, for the last 15 years, has been this, the progression, right? So swap one to get one, swap one to get one. And I really know what I want now. So I think, you know, I may build like a 10 or 12 car collection, you know, if I have the room to keep them.
Yes.
And so I think I may
start doing that.
Now hopefully, you know, if the business keeps rolling, hopefully I won't need to, you know, to the money, you know, the money from one to enter and exit.
It won't be,
enter.
Exactly.
it's like, well, my GT cars, it's like I can't have two of them. Mm-hmm. So the GT4, GT3 has been the first time where like I can reasonably have both of them.
Yeah.
And where in the beginning it was like I was stretching to get the one, and so I'd swap the one to get the other, and so now do I just hang on to them?
Mm-hmm.
And
I
so
say yes.
So I think, and that's why I'm reluctant to get rid of the E92 M3, because I have a really great one. So do I keep that, and would I like to have that in a garage, and would it be really nice to just pull it out of the garage once every 6 months or something?
I think so. Yeah. I think that the answer to that is yes, because what I think is, since the way you built it, because the fact that you built that Civic, not that you want the Civic, but the fact that you revisited that, I have a feeling someday if you let that M3 go, you're going to want it back, and then you're going to just chase your tail again. You'll be like, I had a good one that I let go. Now I got to pay a high dollar for another one that's unmolested, it's perfect, and then molest it the way I want it again.
Especially if you're going to strategize on the long term, and we do think, and it will happen, that all those cars that are special, they're going to rise in value. I mean, there's no doubt.
Yeah, and you picked that car too. I mean, it's a special car. I mean, that's the only time ever BMW is going to put a V8 in an M3, and they're never going to do that again.
And it was nice.
And it's so awesome good. V8. So it's one of those things where.
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to think of it's a really not that. I don't even think I'd have a 12-car list. I think it would be 8 cars.
Yeah,
7
mine's
or 8
pretty
cars.
short too. It's not double digits. Mine's single digits. I think I top out around 7 or 8, where I could live at and just be like, I've got everything I've ever wanted now.
And then you have like some new rotators, where you rotate out. So, I'd have a 997 GT3 RS 4.0 we talked about. I'd have the E92 M3. I'd have a 458 Speciale, what are those, 2013 or what, 14. I'd have some variant of a 991 GT3. I'd have a GT4. And then I would have some like rotate between like an NSX and R8. So 6 or 7 cars would be it.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and an E46 M3. I would like to have like a really clean, like 5,000 mile, $100,000 version of that car.
Would you go hardcore and get the CSL like version or whatever?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I would probably want an 05. I think that were the Interlagos, so an 05 competition package, blue, and nice. Try to find a non-sunroof car, manual, and then modify it really nicely.
Yeah, that's $100,000 car already.
Yeah. I'd have to pay 70 or 80 to get one. And then, so that's something I'd like to get at some point. And I think the 997 GT3 is something I'd really, that's the aspirational car that I think I'm going to get inside of 2 years. I don't do dreams. I freaking make it happen.
That's the way to do it, man. Absolutely. It's like, it's a goal, and then just go get it. Like, I agree with that. I think that's where we're at in life. I don't think we're at like, oh, well, someday if that happens, it's like, all right, that's going to happen at this point. Like, let's go after that and do that. But I that's a pretty awesome garage. Do you think this is transitioning a little bit, but it's still on the same topic. The GT4 RS is going to be coming. Obviously, it's going to be a paddle shift car. Does that intrigue you at all?
Not really, because if it was a manual, then I'd want the RS version. But no, I want to. If I'm going to have a GT4 and a GT3, I want the manual GT4 and the PDK GT3.
I kind of have the same feeling, even though I don't own that. Like, my thought process behind that, I thought the same thing too. And I talked to you, I think, on one of the podcasts about it. I said, if they make that car in a manual, the RS, that would be a game changer, because now they're making a modern RS and a manual. Like, I think that would be the new everybody wants.
Oh, exactly.
Like, everybody would want that.
That's a GT3 decision there. Do I get a GT3 or do I just get a GT4S?
Did you see the 981 GT4 that Tony has? Did you see they're calling it a GT4 RS? Yeah. That thing is pretty well done. I don't know whose car. I probably know whose car it is, but I don't know whose car it is.
It's pretty wild, though.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It has, I don't know if someone probably bought it. My friend Rob Orlando was looking at it. He was asking me about it. I said, wow, they had it like 150, 109 or something like that, which is more than what those cars go for. But
for what's into that car, I was just about to say, like, the residual, like the what's in it, like if you know,
Yeah.
which we do, what it costs to get it that way, that's still a great buy.
Oh, yeah.
Because you think about all the stuff you don't have to go through to get it that way.
Yeah, it's extremely well done. I thought about that car. I'm like, oh shoot, maybe I should buy that thing.
Yeah, like maybe I'll get rid of mine and keep that one.
So yeah, that would be the main appeal to a GT4 RS would be just the look, the wider fenders,
the aggressiveness of it,
the little extras.
Yeah, but is that worth a $60,000 move? Probably not for me.
Yeah,
especially since it's PDK. I would want to have it in a manual.
Yeah, I know we talked a little bit offline about this, and you hinted at it. So the 992 coming out. Obviously, we've seen spy shots, and they're going to come out with a touring. Is that something that's kind of got your attention?
Yeah, so that would be in talking about this building a garage now, and part of it is going to be I'm moving, so I'll have a garage at my house, and then this will become a garage because all the warehouse stuff will be going out, and so I will have covered storage for cars, so that I can, because I like to have all my cars clean. And then just have one dirty. And right now I have all dirty and one clean. And then if I clean too many, it sits out in the pole barn and gets all dusty.
And then it's all for naught, right?
Yeah. And so, this facility will be able to store, say, 4 cars, and then I can do, 3 or 4 at my house that were all stored comfortably. And so, in a perfect world, I would like to have, GT4. A GT3, RS, and I would like to stay on the wave and have whatever the new variant. I don't know that the RS is going to supplant like the 992 RS. We'll see, but I would like to have a GT3 touring in some paint to sample color of some sort. Would be cool. I'd love to have something like Brewster green, like a dark, like British Racing green.
Would look good.
I'd like to have that with some dark tan seats, but rest black interior. And
that'd be sharp.
So that's something I'd like to have and keep.
Yeah, that sounds like a good trio. I like that.
But I mean, 3 of the same cars. So.
Yeah, it is. I know it sounds like for people listening that probably sounds pretty like asinine, but like I'm so in the weeds with it. Like I that makes total sense to me. Like, and I don't know if it's just self-justification. Like, I'm justifying all of those cars. Like, for me, like, I'm like, oh, well, I've got a manual Turbo S, and then I've got an air-cooled, and then I'm getting a Safari build. Like, they're all really different to me in my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm sure somebody on the outside probably looks at us and they're like, you guys are crazy. They're all the damn same thing.
Well, if there were dozens of other, like we were talking about, like in the 90s or 2000s, there were dozens of other like amazing cars that I was aspiring to have, then it'd be a waste.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a GT4 and a GT3. I would have, like, if the new M3 was awesome, I would have a new M3. I wouldn't have a GT4.
That's true. I mean, you had me thinking about it ever since you said it. There's no one's really creating something.
There's nothing I want
at all. It's all
the only car that I think is cool is a Supra, and it doesn't come in a manual.
What do you think about the BMW M2 CS?
I hate that car.
Yeah.
Because it has an S55.
Yeah.
And the motor's terrible. I mean, the motor's great, but it's a sell your soul to the devil.
Gotcha.
To get that. I mean, so that car, it looks great. Other than you have to get rid of the stock exhaust because it looks like a wet diaper, full diaper hanging off the back of it. Because they made the rear bumper, they didn't bring the valance down enough, and then the exhaust is hanging too low, so they painted it black. That helped a little bit.
Yeah.
But the M2, when they put the S55, which delivers amazing power, super linear. But it sounds terrible. Even with the new, equal length exhaust they're making for them, it helps with the farting and the weird sound. But it's just, what I was planning on doing was, when I bought my E92, was I was thinking about buying an M2, but I wanted to do like an individual color or something cool, like a British Racing green or something like that. And then they came out with a competition, and I'm like, this is terrible. I know it's faster, I know it's more tunable, but that engine is just, it sounds awful. And the problem is people love it, and they support it, and so BMW.
Well, that's why I wanted to get because you're a BMW enthusiast also, and I wanted to get your headspace behind it, because the general populace is in love with that car.
I know. And that's the problem. And so I know exactly what's happening with BMW. And you look at the new M3, which is like the most hideous thing I've ever seen in my life.
What are they doing with that grill, man?
People have been telling them that on a smaller scale since the beginning of time. For every M3, the hardcore enthusiasts have said, "What are you doing?" And so BMW thinks they know better.
Okay, so it's one of those. They're like, it's going to fall on deaf ears. They don't care.
The problem is they probably do know better, and that people are now. I'm seeing like when they first showed pictures, it was all puke and poop emojis, puke face poop emojis. And now you look at it, it's like 50% of the people are saying they love it.
They're drinking the Kool-Aid, huh?
And then 50% are poop emojis. And then eventually it'll be, there'll only be the 10% of us left. And BMW is going to see that, and they're going to sell a bunch of cars to idiots.
They're like, see, we win.
It makes me...
I thought that, when I first saw that, I thought that was a joke. I thought it was a Photoshop thing. I'm not even kidding just to say that like on air. I thought it was a joke. I go, somebody Photoshopped this. This isn't funny. Why'd they do this to this car? And then like, that is what it looks like.
Well, I mean, I can see two things. I can see it probably is an engineering thing, and it's getting air. And the other thing I can see is they try to go retro, and that's technically those grills are from back in the day. Those old.
Well, they're carrying that design model through all of their lines, though. Yeah. Like even like what the not the X7, whatever. All of those cars are getting that design language, which is awful.
And it's so big and bulbous, and and then you look at the seats they put in the launch car, and they're like lime green and light blue, and like just. I mean, one of the greatest things about BMWs was their just simple, classy German engineering.
What they used to be, but they haven't. Now they're not.
They're hiring French or something to come and be the engineer, or some Italians and French to come in there and flash it up a little bit. And it's just, I like the boring guys,
Heads up, BMW. Remember the E39 M5? That car? Make cars like that again. Like, that was very simple. Like, it was enough where you saw it and you knew, if you knew what it was, you knew it was. But if you didn't, it could blend in. And that was the cool thing about all their M products back then.
It saddens me because I would literally get a new one every year. Like, if I love the car, like I would be so excited to like be a part of the process, and I would get like F80. I would have gotten a 2015, 16, 17, 18. I would have gotten a new one every year and kept up with all the updates. And I'm at the point in my life where I could do that. And it's dead to me. I have no interest. It's just terrible.
Yeah, their design language has really fallen off the reservation.
The motors they put in them are a disaster. The new M5 is a ZF automatic.
Yeah,
it's not even a dual clutch anymore. And they all fart. The overrun that they do, and in order to keep it in boost.
The hot boy tune where the burble blah blah blah
burble tune. Just so. Oh my god.
The hot boy tune.
I'm turning into the old man, but
I don't think so. I think it's you like what you like, and
there's a classic. Older, I love take a Cutlass 454. I mean, you can't not like that. It's a great car. I don't aspire to own one, but that old big cam V8. I don't care who you are. If you're a car guy, it never gets old.
No, anything cammed V8 sounds awesome.
And then you take a 90s Supra. It sounds incredible, or a 90s or 2000s GTR. Oh yeah, they sound great. And then BMW shows up with they finally give you a car that decimates all, and it farts. Like, what in the world is going on? Like, why Nissan can make a turbo sound good.
Yeah.
Why can't BMW?
Yeah.
Porsche's turbos are at a disadvantage because it's right there. Yeah. But even they don't sound terrible, especially in the car.
No.
Now the car is a little whooshy sounding, but
a little intakey sound, vacuuming, but
like they literally made it sound terrible.
Yeah, I don't know how they got away with it.
488 sounds fine, and you get the McLaren sound great.
Oh yeah, phenomenal. They're turbos. Yeah, it's a great point actually. That we've never really talked about where why haven't they got it together?
Well, they think it sounds good. They think they're being different. They're doing it on purpose. Just I always complain about, why do they have this wet noodle, manual? And that's because they think that that's better.
This is the best. We know better.
No, you want a mechanical feel.
Yeah.
And they just won't freaking listen.
Yeah, I guess all of their engineers and all the guys that basically left with all the other cars.
Yeah, well,
that
peace
jet.
out,
Yeah.
BMW. I'm done with you. It's sad because the enthusiast group was the best, and now it's a bunch of fist pumping, spiky haired douchebags.
It's changed a lot, because I remember even back then when BMW guys, I would say, and you talked about the progression. I think a lot of it was that way with, Porsche. A lot of Porsche guys came from BMW, myself included.
Yeah.
Same.
I loved BMWs. I had them. They were awesome. I wanted to daily an M5 as my daily and have a track spec M3. That was what I wanted. I had an M3. I was working towards that. And then, you start to make a little bit more money and you start to transition. But anyways, it used to be that same lines where racing was important, the mechanics were important, mechanicals were important,
right?
And
you just felt like the engineering was important.
Yeah, it all got away from all of that.
Yeah,
where it got more into let's make it a really dashing color, because all of this other weird stuff. You see some of these wild colors, like you say, even with BMW, and it's almost they're trying to be PTS stuff. They're trying to copy other people instead of keeping their own identity, because they never used to do weird stuff like that.
Yeah, and then the only way that I can the analogy I keep coming back to and explaining it is there was at some point there was a selling of the soul.
Yeah.
And they sold the soul because just like Honda, we'd always apologize for no torque and and making lots of noise, not going anywhere. And BMW, E36 was slow, the E46 was slow, the E92 was slow, and each one of them had little quirks and problems.
Exactly.
And the E60, which is the most beloved car. Nobody wanted that car back when it was new.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted an E60 M5. Mm-hmm. Not one single person. They couldn't sell them to save their lives.
You're right.
And now it's that's the hot boy's dream to have the
exactly.
have the V10, the Lamborghini
100%.
sound.
Yeah, everybody wants one of those.
But all of those cars had quirks. They had character. They were slower than everything else that were the competitors. The Mercedes competitor or the other competitors in the market, but they had they were the ultimate driving machine.
They had soul,
character, and soul. And so when the F80 came out, now you have this massive tunable platform. The soul was sold. So the driving feel, the steering feel, the weight transfer, the way it's set up, the best looking car ever.
Yeah.
I think the F80 M3 is one of the best looking cars ever built. So you had this amazingly built car.
Sexy car.
Tons of horsepower, amazing power delivery. Everything on paper is perfect. But yet there's no soul. And I had that car for 2 years. I got a launch car. I was so excited. I spec'd it out. I picked it up at Performance Delivery Center, drove it home through the mountains, and in a year I'm like, why don't I have this thing? I love walking up to it and looking at it, but I hate driving it.
Yeah.
And I hate the sound of it. It's so bad. I kept holding on to hope that they'd eventually fix it. They finally have something with the equal length exhaust that Activists come out with and a couple other companies. Finally something that makes it sound normal.
Yeah.
But it still farts at the end of that. And so
And I agree. I love the way that car looks too. And when I saw that, when they were launching that car, I was like, man, this is probably the best M3 they've ever made, looks wise.
And
that was before I knew all of that stuff went into
Before
it.
you hear it.
And the problem is that people absolutely love it. And so I'm screwed.
Well, I think it's just one of those things too, where it's almost the people that are in love with it are in love with it for the wrong reasons. As far as they don't love that, the older ones, how we loved they had soul. They're in love with. I think they're in love with it for the tunability.
Yeah, they want to be faster.
They just want to
stoplight to stoplight.
Yeah,
they just and they love the burbles. They love the sound.
Yeah, they want to be seen. They want to make that noise. They want the car to be fast. That's all they want. They don't want it to have that feel we're, like you said, I'm in the mountains, I'm driving, and the car's just the exhaust. The car sings. It makes this perfect noise.
But they also might not have any background at all. They might not know. They don't know what they don't know.
But see, when I didn't know, I wanted my car to make noise, but I wanted to be loud noise because it was so good. I wanted more people to hear it.
Yeah.
And there even back in the day, when the old fart can exhaust on a Japanese car, and you'd have the kids who just didn't get it.
Yeah.
I wanted to have like this throaty intake.
Sound. Yeah.
Or of course, as much as I hate Corvettes, I loved Camaros and Corvettes and how they sounded, and that was just like, I always joked when I was younger, I want to buy one and just rev it up in the garage and turn it off.
Yeah.
And so now you have these cars that just sound terrible, and you have kids buying Corvettes and putting burble tunes on. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why would you want to take the only good thing about that car and make it bad? It's nuts.
I know. Has a great exhaust note, and you're screwing it up. Like, what are you doing?
So you take a C63S, sounds worse than the S55 M3. It's like this giant V8 huffing through a straw with farts and pops put at the end of it to mask it. Like, I don't understand why GTR can sound so good and yet BMW and Mercedes can't.
Well, then on top of that too, it goes back to like with the knowledge, like we know like what's happening during that burble tune too. So like when I hear that stuff, and like I know from a mechanical standpoint, I'm like, man, so you tuned your car to shut the valves to dump all of that gas in there, so the exhaust could just burn it up instead of it's unspent.
Right.
And I'm
it's inefficient.
Yeah, I'm like, this is why are people doing this? But it's
cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. We know why. It's because it's cool.
Yeah. It's trendy. That's what it is. It's trendy. And it's the lemmings following the lemmings is what it is, as opposed to people being like, this is stupid.
And I've always been the opposite, to just try to be different.
Same.
To listen to different music, have a different bent to this day. I'm into detailing, but I'm always doing something different than everybody else.
Yeah.
And I have no desire to follow the crowd, and even though there is kind of a classic standard with cars that's correct in my world, that's really, it's always been anti, because everybody was buying Altezza lights and Racing Heart wheels and Underglow back in the day, and I wanted to buy TE37s and Comtech parts and Jackson Racing.
I thought Underglow was dumb the first time it came out. Now the second time it's making a second run, and it's still dumb.
And brighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now they're LEDs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's transferred to everything. I mean, it's even in the truck world.
Yeah,
like I was
put it inside the wheel.
Downtown
the
St. Pete having dinner the other night because I live in St. Pete, and there's this huge, hot boy truck coming down with the skinny tires and the 35-inch rims on it, but lifted all to hell, and it's, I mean, lit up like a spaceship with all this underglow, and and this is probably the old man in me coming out, but I'm like, what's the point of that? Like, it doesn't
take a cool truck that could do awesome stuff,
and made it off-road capable, and you made it basically a Christmas tree going down the road, and you paid $100,000 for an F-250 Lariat King Ranch edition to make it unable to tow, unable to go off-road. What? I don't get it.
And it's not making it different, because when they go, everybody else is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I just think in general people are rather unoriginal.
Yeah,
and that's good for me, because then I can
show them the light,
do stuff that provides value to the world that's very different.
Exactly,
and it's by being mainstream is different.
Yeah,
by sticking to simple rules.
Yeah.
Or
just being a free thinker makes you different, right? Like as opposed to like, you're like, well, okay, I don't like that because that doesn't appeal to me. It's not because I don't think you guys all think it's cool, and I'm not just trying to be different. I really don't think it's cool.
Well, I think in pretty much anything, there's a classic style. There's a classic a thing that doesn't get dated.
I agree.
So like for instance, the gauge cluster in the Civic Si, the guy put overlays on it. And at the time, you probably thought that was the coolest thing. You got to improve this.
Yeah.
But you pull it off, and it just looks classic. It looks great,
yeah,
and clean, and it was great then, and it's great now.
Exactly.
Whereas, or like in home design, like you have these trends where people do, think of orange countertops and green shag carpet. Like I would think. At the time, I would have rebelled against that completely. Say, what are you doing? Why wouldn't you just choose gray countertops and brown, tan carpet or something?
Be contemporary about it, yeah.
And it's like in the garages, I see this so often where, for a long time it was you paint a red stripe on the wall and you hang banners, and now the latest thing is to do these hex lights, these goofy because now you can take LEDs and you can put strips of them. And it just seems so clear to me that, it might be 6 months, but probably 6 years from now, you're going to walk in and say, what was I thinking?
Yeah, I agree.
And so I just feel like, in cars, the same thing. There's a classic, and that's why Porsche is so appealing. There's a modernization, but there's classic things that work.
I mean, you think about their dash layout. I mean, it was the same for the longest time, and there's a reason for that, because it works. And then some people say, well, that's boring, it's not different, but it goes back to being timeless though.
Well, look at a GT2 RS with that goofy red interior. That's not going to age well.
Oh yeah, 100%. You're going to go back and look at that in 10, maybe even less years.
Man, I wish it didn't have that. Great car, but I wish it didn't have that
this
weird
looks
red interior.
Really wonky right now, man.
And I think it all comes back to this. All ties together of the BMWs sounding terrible and the weird grills and people doing weird lights in their garage. Dudes in general, you have to fight that desire to put stickers all over your dresser.
Yeah.
Even to this day, my Restoration Hardware dresser, I'm like, man, I got all these stickers. I'm like, I'd like to put them on there. That's my dude curse,
that's
That's
neon
a great way. Signs and weird lights and painting accent walls and doing weird crap.
Yeah.
You have to fight that dude, putting underglow on your lifted truck.
Yeah.
You have to fight that tendency and think about what's classic and what works.
You're like, this may be cool for 6 months, like you said, but am I going to really regret this in a little bit? And a lot of times the answer is yes, to be honest with you.
Hella flush, heavy camber, the VIP style. All these things you're going to look back and say, man, that was dumb. My one dumb thing with cars is and back in the early 90s, I wanted tri-stars, TSW tri-stars.
Okay.
Remember the triangle wheels?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I wanted an S10 with tri-stars on it. I thought that was some kid had. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And that was my that was my curse.
Yeah, that was your bonehead.
I never wanted Altezza taillights. I never wanted underglow. I never wanted 20-inch wheels in my Civic.
Yeah.
Even to this day, all the stuff on my car was very similar then. It's classic. All the stuff I wanted then still holds up today, and just because it was just a classic, simple move.
Yeah.
And I think if you keep that theme in your house and your on your cars and the paint colors you choose and things you do, it's just
I think those things like you're talking about too, they stand the test of time, right? That's what makes them a classic, right? That's why we refer to them as classic, because it still looks good, right? Like you're not going to go like prime example, that red interior that you're talking about on a brand new GT2 RS, right? Like that's really shouty, and someday when we're old men and there's a whole nother generation that comes along below us, it's 30, 40, and they're doing well, and they see that car and it's a vintage car at that point, and they look at it and they're going to look at it and they'll be like, who the hell spec'd this?
And I think about that like with my green interior. It's like, does this hold up? And it's right on the edge.
I think it's a neat contrast.
It's right on the edge.
I think yours is right because it has something to do with a launch. They did like the so I think when it has a purpose behind it and you can speak to that purpose, I think there's something. But I'm saying, like, if you were to go do that and they didn't launch that way and you did that on your own, I would be like, you drank some absinthe that night. Like, you were tripping, man? Like, what were you doing? You're like, well, I thought it looked all right.
Green.
But the fact that there's some thought.
Well, but you could argue that the GT2 is the same thing,
Yeah, you could say that, but
that was the color. That was the standard color.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the end, it's an opinion that
subjective,
but is largely debated by the masses.
Yeah.
And this is part of the reason why I will always be limited in life, because I rebel against the masses.
Yeah, exactly.
I rebel against
conformity.
Yeah, and just choosing what is hot, what is cool.
Because I think it's going to cool off after a little bit, because it's just because you've been around long enough, especially even when you were young, like you were an old soul, as you said. You could see that stuff like even die off, like where people go. And remember back then, before there was a lot of tuner stuff, people would go to AutoZone and buy a bunch of stupid crap and put it on their cars, and people are still doing that stuff.
Just in a different style.
Yeah. And it's just, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, these AutoZone cars, and it's like, you took a decent car and made it awful with all of this crap, this garbage you put on it.
But I think about like the garages that I design now. Like the garage I did in Virginia. I did Emmanuel's garage in Virginia. I couldn't imagine that 20 years from now that looked outdated. Yeah, there may be some new technology and things, but the gray and black is timeless.
Yeah, it'll be fine forever.
Now, if I did some crazy, if I did those goofy alien bee lights,
did neon tiles on the floor and stuff like that, like
it wears out, you know.
It says something for that chrome scheme.
Think about guys who do, checkerboard floors.
Yeah.
I mean, like Barry Maguire, his garage in his house, and Maguire's or not in the house, but in the original Maguire's facility was like, in the 80s was like the coolest thing ever.
Hot rod shop, it's checkerboard.
Yeah.
Now you look at it, it's like, what in the world?
Yeah.
This is the most hideous thing ever.
Yeah. You end up having a seizure, and they're walking around looking at it.
I think I would have thought that was hideous back then too.
Yeah, I don't think I would have gone with that route, even though that might have been like the hot rodder scheme and all that kind of stuff. I think even if I lived back in the day and I built a hot rod, like in the 50s, the guys are building like 32 Fords, I think mine would have been as consistent matte black. Where people were painting all these like stripes and weird things and bomber grills and all that stuff. I think I would have probably just had a matte black one. Like that's as far as it would have went. Like just looked real like race car-y, like maybe unfinished for the times. So like if you lived in that era, I think that's probably what I would have described me, like something not like where it's super shouty or, where people were putting bass paint, like it was like glittery paints and all that kind of stuff on it.
And I think maybe it's a smarter way to live, like BMW is catering to, they're skating to where the puck is.
Yeah, I think for them, it could be survivability, right? Like guys like us are dying off. Maybe there's more of the others than there are of us. So it's one of those type of deals, right? So we'll cater to the masses to sell more cars.
I don't know. I don't do this in my business at all, where I'm marching to the beat of my own drum. Like I'm not interested in I would have so much more appeal if I just if I was interested in what's going on with graphene, what's going on. It just seems clear to me when things are bullcrap and when they're legitimate.
But do you think? I think the people that do buy your product and stand with you is because who you are, though.
Yeah, yes, there is the but that's niche. So there's a niche demographic, and I've chosen to take that path because I enjoy those people more.
Yeah.
There's less likelihood of me having culture clashes with the audience or the people, the customer base, the client base. If you stick to your guns and because otherwise I'm going to turn off.
Yeah.
Like the Tesla's a classic example. Every single video I'm going to refer to them as Tesla nerds, and the ones that aren't nerds won't take offense. They'll think it's funny.
Exactly.
But they have a Tesla. I have a Tesla, so we're both Tesla nerds.
Exactly.
But we're not really nerds because I can go out and fire a 40-mile-an-hour spiral with a football.
Exactly.
And I could squat 300 pounds.
Exactly.
And
right.
nerds can't do that.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I know I'm not a nerd, but I do have a Tesla, so that makes me a Tesla.
Yeah, you're
nerd.
part of that group. Yeah.
And so I'm going to turn off the people that don't belong.
Yeah. But I also think too, and it goes back because you run your own business for a while now, and I think your ethos and your culture behind it was smart, because kind of like what we're doing is we could have done like an all automotive podcast, right? Like, but that's not what really made us tick. And I think if you stay true to who you are, you don't have to front, right? Like, and pretend to be something else, because it'll eventually catch up, right? Like you said, you'll turn off.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're questioning here.
I think if you do it long enough,
are you smart as BMW to just cater to what culture wants?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they're just a different animal now. Like, they have a boardroom. I'm sure all these clowns sit on and they vote on where their design's going to go. Like, we're small time. We're talking about how we run our own things, and we're staying true to what matters to us, and we do what we do because we love it, and we don't really care if you don't like it. There's the door. And I think for people that are doing that, that becomes less and less common. I think there's so many more of going to the masses to just make the buck, right? Like, who cares? Like, as opposed to where BMW maybe could have not let the board monkeys tell them what to do. They could have sit there and say, well, this is not what we do. This isn't BMW. We're not doing that. This isn't in our design culture. Somebody could have stood up, somebody could have made it, maybe somebody did, and they got voted down. They got voted down. But unfortunately, there was enough of those guys that pushed against that.
There's no way that, the majority of people could sit there and say, this is it.
Yeah. I'm sure there was a big internal fight there, but unfortunately the yes ma'ams won on that one.
Well, I just hope, I pray it doesn't sell. Please, people, don't buy it.
Yeah.
Please don't buy it.
Yeah.
It's the only way we're going to get through to them.
That's true.
It's the only way, because if it sells, then we're wrong.
Then you don't have. Well, yeah, like back to what you're saying, Matt. Like, if you don't have a voice, the only voice you have in that is don't buy the product. Is the only way.
Well, I'm not a million years. I'm not doing it. Yeah, this thing is hideous. A big giant car needs to be literally 75% of the size it is. It needs to be. It needs to be. It needs to be 25% smaller. It needs to be lighter.
Well, and if they did that, then they would save money, because it's less materials, there's less everything. It's so much more efficient, and that doesn't make any sense why they wouldn't.
Yeah, make it smaller, which would make it lighter. There's no reason why an M3 shouldn't be under 3,000 pounds.
No, I totally agree with that.
There should be a target goal on the whiteboard. It should be 3,000.
It should be 2,750, and make it super light.
Yeah.
I know it's hard with safety and crash testing,
but it can be done. I mean, you spend all that. They're spending all that R&D and design and all that for what they've come out with. It's like, what are you guys doing? Are you guys asleep at the wheel here?
I think what happens. This is what I battle every day. Is that you think about a retailer, and you think about, well, I want to capture as many people as I can, and then when you have shareholders and a publicly traded company, and you have a board of directors and all this. Like, I need to appeal to as many people as I can. So I'm going to sell this soap. Well, I'm missing out on these sales, so I should sell that car soap. I said, well, but then I'm really missing out on these people too, so I'm going to sell that car soap. Next thing, you have 32 car soaps. And so this car, started out as a certain size, and then, well, if we add 2 inches to the leg room, then we can add in a demographic of moms, and then if we turned it to this color, we can move the age demographic down 2 years.
That's exactly. You're absolutely right. This is exactly what happened. That they got in there and they let everybody put their hand in it,
and now it becomes a catch-all. It's like, well, the grills are this big, but man, if we make it this big, it could really change the industry.
We could be a trendsetter. You're like, yeah, okay, good luck. But
maybe it works. I mean, look at female fashion is the classic example of not classic, not dated. What's the current thing is all these chicks are wearing their pants up to their. It looks so stupid. I don't think there's a guy on earth that likes that.
No,
who cares?
But they don't care. They don't care what guys think.
No.
Or, remember like the poof thing in their hair?
Oh,
they did that thing. It was like, you're so stupid.
The front bump. That's what it was.
Or the tramp stamp.
Yeah.
And it goes on and on and on of all these stupid things that the female fashion takes on.
Yeah.
That almost
that dies
none
out
of them
so
are
fast.
Cool. Yeah. Almost none of them are cool.
Yeah.
And yet they, they do it because
you're right. Maybe they're just trying to be a trendsetter for the time, and then just like sell a product, a dead product, to make sales, to make a quota. They're chasing a number now. It's a shame.
Yeah, and they're laughing at Porsche staying niche with the GT car division that's wildly successful, extremely profitable. And all the other
enthusiasts too. It give Porsche people crap, or Porsche in general crap about like, oh, they all look the same. They all look this, and it's like, yes and no. you're kind of right and you're kind of wrong. Like if you educate yourself, you can definitely tell that there, even within the generations, we talk about dot ones, dot twos, all that stuff. There's variance within that. They're perfecting a product. Yes, maybe for the layman, when you look at a car, they look all the same, and maybe you can just tell that, okay, well, that one's older than that one, and that's about as far as it goes. But it's also one of those things where, and I'm going to compare another brand, which is kind of up there. No one gives Rolex shit for making the same Submariner that they've made for 50 years, and people are still lining up to buy them.
Right. They just make slight improvements to it, over the years.
Bezel.
Yeah.
But I think it goes back to what you said before. It's an opinion discussed amongst the masses that it doesn't really matter, right? Like, because most of those masses aren't owners or buyers for that vehicle.
Right. And that's the experience that I've had in my, niche business as well, is that, if I pick the one soap and then I say, this is the one, it's the best one. It's the one that I prefer to use most. And then the masses are going to say, well, it's funny because the masses won't buy what I'm saying, and they call the niche people sheep.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, we're the lions.
Yeah, exactly. We're the free thinkers.
Yeah, you're the sheep.
Exactly.
They get what we're talking about here. No one's the vast majority of people that are following me are not following anything blindly. They're following it with extreme amount of education.
Same with us.
And they're making a choice to say, well, this guy has put in the work, and the amount of work that I deem of value.
Yeah.
I got I had to shut it down, but on Instagram, this one guy, he
the trolls. We're talking to you, trolls, if you're listening.
Yeah, this guy was he was just calling messaging to thank me. Yeah. And it didn't go well, but he just said, I want to let you know, thanks a lot for teaching me how to buy all this stuff elsewhere, cheaper. He says, I used all your videos, and I used it all to go out, and he's like, but then he was asking me a question. So he was
giving you an FU thank you.
Yeah. But he couldn't see why this wasn't a big deal. And then at the end of it, he's asking me a question because he didn't get it right. He didn't buy it right. And so he's like, interesting. And well, what about this and that? So he's asking me all these questions about my, the one gun that I have manufactured. You can't get anywhere else. And of course, he doesn't want to pay for it. And so he's like, well, how does this work? Because what he's clearly trying to do is trying to get me to answer how to replicate it for less money.
Nope.
And I said, what you should do, I didn't even know he bought everything elsewhere yet. And I said, what you should have done, you just buy it all from me.
Yeah.
And he said, well, why would I do that? Then you won't get it wrong. He said, well, why would I do that? You give me all the information. I watched all the videos, and I'm a smart shopper. And I said, well, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. I said, you should honor the source. He says, well, I'm not. There's three type of people that follow you. One are the haters. Two are the sheep who just follow everything you say, and three are people like me. And so I guarantee you the guy had ad blocker on.
Yeah.
Right. So he probably didn't even watch the videos with the ads
100%,
on.
Yeah.
It's just a taker in life. He's the same guy. I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but he's the same guy. I'm talking about niche and sheep.
Yeah.
Who, I don't know, but you guys, you go to the airport, and I'm, I have all these points, so I always fly first class. So I'm off the plane first. And when you fly Delta first class, your bag comes off first. But I paid, $1,000, $1,200 for my seat. And so then I go down to baggage claim to get my bags, and I always stand, like, let's say baggage claim is 10 feet away. I find a spot because I'm the first one there, because I'm the first one off the plane, and I know my bag's coming out first.
Yeah,
because they bring all the first class bags out first. And so I'm standing like off on the side, like 15 feet away, where I can see it, but 15 feet away. And then naturally, as more people come, and the more people come, they're coming off the back of the plane. And these are the people that bought like the price line ticket for $100, and yet they're the ones that push and they line up around the thing, so you can't even see it.
They block you out. Yep.
And so all the people who paid the most are the ones that are standing at the back of the line, just doing
chilling
the right
out.
thing.
Yep.
And so that guy on Instagram was the same guy who's standing. His bag isn't coming out for 45 freaking minutes,
but he's gonna block everybody else out.
Yeah. And so then I have to walk all the way around, wait for the bag to come all the way around to the end, so that I can get my bag and then go on my way.
You're 100% right.
Instead of everybody just
Yeah, he doesn't appreciate all the hours that you put in to do all the stuff, and that goes back to him not knowing you and just being a drone and watching the videos. Like you said, he's a taker. He's just trying to take information from you instead of knowing you as a person and your background of like what you do here and what you've been able to accomplish and develop, as opposed to just saying like, well, I just want information from you. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. I just want everything from you, so I don't have to do any work.
And so my point of all of this with BMW is, why wouldn't you want to cater to the lions, in this example?
Yeah.
Why would you want to cater to that guy who's going to complain? He's going to come in to get service when it doesn't need serviced. He's going to, make
zero
people
loyalty.
work.
That's those people that they're catering to have zero loyalty.
As soon as someone gives them a better deal or has 2 more horsepower, whatever it is. So when you open up the myriad of people, as soon as a seat has 2 more inches, they're going to jump ship.
Exactly.
Because they're not loyal to it. And so why wouldn't you sit down with your loyal fans?
Yeah.
And you have to have intelligence that your fans are unoriginal, and so they're going to want you to make the same E36 forever. And obviously you're not going to be able to do that. And so you use that data intelligently to come up with what they would want, even though they don't know what they'd want. And why won't they do that instead of just appealing to this guy that is just going to run them into the ground?
Yeah.
I don't think they have that base. Like, I don't think they built it up like Porsche did with their GT car.
They had it.
I mean,
yeah, they did. They had it.
M cars were very
because
exclusive.
You think about it. Okay, Porsche. You said GT cars, so I just want to play on that for a second. That's more of a recent development. Porsche has had its enthusiast base way long before that, even in the air-cooled era. Where
they've had it and lost it too over the years.
And they've listened to their people, and then they've stepped out, and then they've had to come back.
Not the 944, the 993 were terrible.
And like
so there are
they step out, and then the masses go nuts. Like the loyal enthusiasts go nuts, and they recenter and they QC themselves to back where they should.
Well,
be
the only reason that happened is because no one bought it.
Yeah. Because that's the people who only really were buying Porsches were the enthusiasts. So when the enthusiasts all got together and were just like, we're not buying this car. And that's what happened. But unfortunately, I think where we're at now with the BMW situation is
it's a shareholder.
Exactly. They have a bunch of the lemmings willing to buy the guy, the information taker guy, who just wants that car for now. Because he doesn't care about BMW, because that guy probably owned a freaking Mustang 3 years ago. And that he's just a brand hopper. Whatever's the newest, finest, coolest thing at the moment, the trendsetter moment, like he's that guy.
I guess there's a lot more of those than there are the hardcore enthusiasts.
There is, unfortunately, they play to those clowns.
But one of the things you could do is just like Porsche, just raise the price. And so Porsches have like 24% margin in them, and all these accessories that we're buying, I don't even care.
Yeah,
I want them to be successful, because if they are, then they'll make more.
Exactly.
They'll have more resources to do more cool stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I kind of meant. I wasn't saying that they don't have any passion behind BMW, but they don't have, I feel like there's just a GT, like a flagship.
Yeah.
I feel like that BMW with the M divisions, it's kind of competing against the 911, but that's where it stops. It's not really directly a GT comparison.
It's not in the right price point to even go there.
Yeah, that's true.
So do you just get that demographic because that's what they've done?
Yeah, it's frustrating, and so it makes me even more convicted, and I wonder if I'm being naive in my life path and choice to stay the course of being convicted on this. You appeal to those that you're meant to appeal to, and you appeal to your base rather than going and attempting to be everything to everyone. And I just think that maybe you would have a better life because you would be super rich, because the old adage is you sell to the masses, you live with the classes.
Yeah.
But maybe and that's what a BMW does, and why BMW would be bigger than Porsche. But it is frustrating to see as someone who would prefer to consume from those that are in the same mindset, the same classic mindset, not the guy who puts a neon sign on the wall. That's the guy who's going to buy this new M3.
Yeah, that's true. It's strange, but I mean, it's probably from us just being on the earth for the amount of time we've been on it too. Who knows? Like it turns into one of those things where you're starting to see, decades of stuff because we've been around long enough.
But wouldn't you want to sell I want to sell to 40 and 50-year-olds, not 20-year-olds.
No, I agree with you. But I think it could be just one of those like where it could just be their design culture, like, and I'm not trying to stand up for them, but it could just be like, maybe we're already out of their mindset. They're like, well, whatever. If you buy, don't care. Like, I want to sell to this 20-year-old because maybe he'll be my customer for the next 40 years.
That is the way they look at it.
It's got to be, yeah.
That's got to be.
Because now, like, you're already kind of at the end of where you're going to be buying for us, like maybe they're already in that demographic of like, all right, you've already outgrown BMW, in their mindset maybe.
Because if you're still here buying a BMW, maybe you're not as successful as we'd want you to be. I don't know. That seems odd to me. Or maybe they think they're capturing because they have the 7 Series or the 8 Series of these other cars.
Maybe you'll graduate to the country club car instead of one of the.
There's got to be some data. I mean, there can't be that many M3 guys that go to a big pig.
I can see them doing, M8. That's the dream. I
just would want to, I would want to, if I were them, and you're right, the original guys are probably all moved on, If I were them, I would want to be around. Like, I would guess Andres Proninger has this amazing life where he spends almost all of his time people just loving what he's doing, what he's creating. He probably loves being around. You see him when he's talking to Chris Harris.
Yeah. And he goes on drives all the time with like clientele and customers.
Right. And that to me is like the ultimate existence. But I think you have to be very intentional in order to realize you choose the happy over the money. Mm-hmm. And then the money comes regardless. I
think so. I think if you hold the course over time, we joked around about it. I think the last time it's like, the overnight 10-year success, right? Like you put 10 years in and you blew up overnight, right? But you stayed the course, and that's why you end up having that long-term success. Like where he came in, I mean, even think about the GT cars as a whole. I wasn't a GT car buyer, but I have friends that were at the very beginning. 996 and 997.1s.
They sat at the dealership.
They couldn't get people to buy them. They couldn't give those cars away because people, classic Porsche people, were still buyers at that time, and they didn't understand the car. They're like, well, why would I buy that car? Right? Why would I just not buy the Turbo? Because Turbo was the flagship for decades.
More horsepower.
Decades and decades. Like, and now you have this track/street car. Like,
it's more expensive.
If I want to go to the track, why didn't I just buy a track car? Like, it was just this new concept where people were just not getting their heads around it. And then the .2 came around. It started getting this cachet behind it, and it started to get all the attention of people in our generation of like, okay, this is an interesting car, and they're doing interesting things with these cars. Like, and it sounds amazing, and it does all of these cool things. Like, this is a really cool car, and it starts more and more and more and more, and now here we are, 2020.
And the 991 came out, and then you could drive it every day if you wanted to.
Yeah, so even within a big brand, in the sense of not a big brand, but big named brand, Porsche, they even had slow success with a product.
Yeah.
Like in 04, that was 16 years ago, and like the launch of that product, people didn't understand it, and they were kind of like not wanting it. Even the Porsche faithful. And now you're giving your firstborn to go get an allocation to get one. Mm-hmm. So it's all, I think time is the test on a lot of these things.
Yeah, I just frustrated, man. I just want, I so aspired to I could have never dreamt to be where I'm at in life, chasing passion, making, more money than I thought I'd ever make, and having resources and then not, like the hope that I had was that I'd be able to buy a new BMW every year.
Yeah,
and I could, but I don't even want it. Like if you gave it to me, I'd say I don't want it.
Yeah.
Just so sad.
It is. That was, and I know where your headspace was, that you were like, okay, my Porsches are going to be my toys, and my M3 new variant, whatever that is going to be my daily.
Yeah, it's going to be my awesome car, that like my practical but yet awesome car, and it's so fun to order and experience the delivery and to, prep that new car and to.
Well, that's the ultimate German car garage right there. The Porsches for the toys, your sports car mountain stuff, and then your daily in the M3.
Yep.
And I even had that vision at my point, like being a BMW guy, but I'm with you on that, where they've taken it and they've dismantled a product that used to be so good.
Yeah, and it's gone mainstream. It's sell it to the masses, even though it's gotten more, a lot bigger and a lot more expensive, a lot less practical and a lot less
they
attainable.
Probably, if we rewind the clock a little bit about on this, like they probably really sold their soul to the devil when they started putting M packages on things.
Right.
That's when they really started to sell their soul to the devil, just to make a couple extra bucks. They took a special part of their brand
that goes
and
to back
gave
to
it
to
everyone.
Add 2 inches to the width,
exactly,
and put this feature or that feature, and let me just put this M badge, and then you had the company. There's just too many names.
It's like, oh, you can afford a 3 Series, but you can't afford an M3, but you want a little bit of flavor, and we can make an extra $6,000 on you by putting some M badging and trim in your car. We'll take your $6,000, and you can pretend you have an M car.
And I'm super okay with a company driving and creating something that I want that I didn't know I wanted. Apple does that all the time to me.
Yeah.
And so I'm not looking for them to listen to us specifically. They're gonna have to innovate, but just stop this this corporate bean counting bullcrap, which just seems pretty clear to me that that's what they're doing, and they're so excited for the car, and it just feels so sad for them that it's just gone awry. So we can only hope again that nobody buys it, and that they see that, and then they come out with something great. But I'm
fingers crossed for that. So all you BMW faithful that are listening out there, don't be a lemming. Hold strong. Buy the old stuff. Go live in the vintage BMW world for a little bit, and then until they course correct, essentially.
Unfortunately, they're probably already in the design stages for whatever's coming up next, and it's going to follow suit.
Yep. Because I would live inside of the BMW ecosystem. I don't care how much money I had.
No, I mean,
I don't care if I was making $20 million a year. I'd still want an M3.
Yeah, that used to be an awesome sedan. It also used to be an awesome sports car. Like it used to be those things, but it hasn't been that for a while, unfortunately. And it's sadly, like that's how fast it can go away. Like look how long it told them to build that reputation, right? And how quickly you can make it diminished. It's like that in life. Like you can make it. It takes you forever to make the money, right? But you can lose it very quickly. So it's like they're losing their reputation very quickly over this.
Yeah. Well, they've lost me.
Yeah.
And and I'm sure many others like me.
Yeah, I mean, I think tons of people have jumped ship, and I think people were jumping ship back when you were talking about the F80. Like it was even before this. I think this was just the nail in the coffin with this whole grill business and all that stuff. Like I think that was it. I think the ones that were hanging on, they were still making excuses even for like the fart exhaust and all that stuff. I think even that group finally, those old school guys or the enthusiasts, the BMW enthusiasts, were like, all right, this is enough. Enough is enough here.
Well, the tuners, we'll see what happens there because they're kind of stuck.
Yeah, that's true.
It's true.
They're kind of stuck in having to buy these things and create parts for them. And
yeah, it's true.
Until it goes EV, and then they got nothing to do. Well, I guess they can still tune the EVs. They can look at computer.
Yeah, look at the. I've got all kinds of parts coming.
Yeah.
True. Excited.
Yeah, you know how much crap I'm going to take for. I bought carbon ceramics for a car that you don't even use the brakes.
That's regenerative.
Yeah, so you literally use the brakes 5% of the time, and I bought carbon ceramics for it because I think it's cool.
That's cool, though. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I think you're going to get a lot of new.
Well, I'm going to try to
you're going to get
de-nerd
a lot of new blood. Just comes across, and maybe you're going to educate a lot of these nerds on the Tesla and bring over some car passion to it, as far as instead of it just being a driving computer.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of guys. There's a lot of real car guys out there that bought them and modified them, made them cool, but no one's really shared it.
Yeah,
and so there aren't really any guys on there that are sharing proper modification. Everything's wraps. everything's lowering springs.
Yeah.
Everything is, maybe airbags, but nothing like legit. Like there's, MPP Performance that I bought. It's a KW variant, KW suspension.
Mm-hmm.
They look like Hyperco springs that they're sort of marrying to a KW shock. And there's like no videos on it.
Yeah,
I'm sure they've sold probably a few thousand sets of them, but there's no data, there's no information on those products. So it's going to do really well for them to for me to make videos on it, and then other people make videos on it. Other people make videos on it. But I was looking for that
all the
information.
free advert they're getting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was looking for that information. So when I'm looking,
somebody else has to be too.
Yeah, there has to be. Right now, there's nothing but nerds that, this is their first car, or their first performance car, guys who weren't even interested in cars, and they're so worried about the windshield wiper squirters and floor mats.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I have a friend that works for Tesla, and he says a lot of the people that even are buying those cars, that's the first car, a lot of the guys that are buying those cars, they're interested about cars for the first time.
Oh, yeah. And so there's a real opportunity. I'm gonna sort of dumb it down a little bit. And so after I insult them, then I'm going to help them, if you will.
Kind of like you did with the Corvette people when you sold it, like put their car up for.
So I'm going to insult first, and then so this is where I would be smart.
You got to do the geek glasses and everything. Dude.
I would be smart if I followed BMW's example and didn't insult everybody and do it
true
in my style, but. Anyway,
just give them a little flavor. You got to give them a little backhand, and then be like, "All right, cool. Here's the deal. I'm glad you guys bought a car."
Right. Well, let's teach you how to wash the thing.
Exactly. Let's make it cool for you.
Yeah. So wait till you see the wheels.
Because we know Tesla paints crap from the factory.
Yeah, it's probably not good, but it seems good enough.
Yeah,
we'll see.
It's gotten a lot better than it did when it was like brand new.
Yeah, I'm less. I'm less interested in car guy lore and more interested in like actual like real experience, and so people like to generalize, and I always like to rebel against that generalization, as you might imagine, and so I'm gonna really analyze it, and if the generalizations are correct, then I'll own up to it, but
most likely not. It's just the masses.
Yeah, I think it's going to be just fine, and and I'm very discerning, and I think it'll be acceptable for what it is. I mean, it is ultimately a $36,000 base car, and one would argue that BMW has $36,000 car and their paint isn't jacked up. Well, BMW is 100 years old,
exactly,
and so I think I'm going into it with expectations that are a little different than. Somebody who has been buying used $10,000 cars now bought a $36,000 car and is expecting perfection because to them
it's a new car and it should be
right. It's their perfect. To me, this is a refrigerator I just bought that I want to try out.
Exactly.
And so I'm not expecting as much out of it, and so I'm interested to see. I haven't gotten under the lights or anything to see. I'm sure there's some paint runs and things, but how bad is that?
Yeah, I think the honest. And you're coming from a good mindset, and even not being a Tesla owner, but knowing their background and their history, I think they get a pardon too. I think people are really harsh on them for what they have, and I think it goes back to that masses talk we were talking about. All those trolls get together, and then they're like, "Oh, well, this is a car, and look at the door gaps, and look at this, and look at that," and I'm like, they're calling a brand new car company, man.
They're calling Tesla owners sheep.
Even though it's the most
they're the freaking lions.
Yeah.
That's what the whole sheep lion thing is completely opposite.
Yeah.
The people that are, even though they're nerds, they're still lions of society in that they're going in and trying something new. They're
absolutely. They're funding it too. I mean, they're putting their dollars and saying, let's make this better.
The thing that is a little odd is that somebody said, thank you so much for going into sustainable energy. And then I start to think, I'm like, I never really thought about this because I don't think about this that often, but it's lithium and cobalt being ripped out of the earth. Exactly, and then I Googled, I said, how do they actually get lithium? Where does lithium come from? So they take millions of gallons of water and they spray it on a bed of salt, I guess it is.
Yeah, it's a
lithium
salt
comes from salt beds.
It's a salt bed.
And then it has to sit there for you have to keep it wet for 18 months or something like that to then somehow extract the lithium. And cobalt only comes from one place in the world.
Yeah.
and it's from this, the area of the Congo or something.
Strip mine the shit out of it to get it.
Right. And then these batteries, it's a lot cheaper to make a new one than it is you can't really recycle the material. Once the material is used up, it's hard to you can't like regenerate it. And so you have these two rare, and I guess lithium isn't a rare earth material, but cobalt, I think, is one of the rare earth metals or compounds. And so you have these two materials that are at, I think, a more limited quantity than oil. And oh, by the way, to get electricity, you have to frickin' burn coal and natural gas and oil
to get
it.
And then not even to get into the deep part, like that's a whole nother thing we could get into, the disposal of the battery when it's not any good anymore.
Right.
So now it's like, what?
Right. So, and just... I'm not arguing that because obviously a fossil fuel driven car is worse.
Yeah.
But it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the heck freaking people are talking about.
Well, that's the thing is like these electric cars are not without their cons, right? Like people pull the wool over their eyes of like, oh, this is the best thing since sliced bread, and it's like, okay, it still does have its vices about it. There's still issues with there's parts of it. This isn't perfect either. Okay.
Right. So I was like, I just thought of that. I wasn't trying to make an argument or It's like, it occurs to me that this might even be worse. That
and depending on where you live and if they're sourcing that material from you, it definitely is a lot worse, because if you live in that environment where they're taking those resources from you and you happen to live there, yeah, it's way worse.
Right. And so, we're so concerned in the United States and Europe. I mean, the U.S. and Europe are not the contributing issue to, global climate, whatever.
Yeah.
Or it's where it's being made that we can't see. Where they're ripping it out of the ground in Africa and China, and then all this.
The air pollution in China is so horrible.
Right. Because they're making all the stuff that we're consuming.
Exactly.
And so I don't know. It just doesn't. It's not this benevolent thing. Certainly not. It's a new thing. It has advantages, but it's certainly not benevolent.
Yeah.
For
absolutely
sure.
not. Yeah. I was I had the same thought process just because I'm like interested about things. So when all of this EV stuff really started coming out, like I did my due diligence and did some like background and stuff and saw how the pros and cons of it, obviously the pros of it, with the exhaust emissions and all that kind of stuff, but the cons, and I'm like, man, some of this stuff is pretty detrimental to the environment too. Like when you have to like dispose of a wrecked car and it becomes hazardous material now, and now you have to do all this stuff, and what do you do with it? You put it in the ground, or what? I mean, what is this? It's going back in the earth too, but now it's poisoning the earth as opposed to when it was a raw material before it lived in the earth naturally. So there's pros and cons to it. Obviously, that's a whole nother long, nasty debate.
Yeah, but it is a cool. It's a interest. I want to say cool. I almost said cool. It's not cool at all. It's freaking nerd city. You're driving around in that thing, I feel like such a dork. But it is a very interesting car. I'm glad I got one. I bought the inexpensive one to see if maybe a Model S made more sense. It's the consensus. The Model 3 is the more nimble, more a better handling car. It's lighter weight, and so it's the tuners that make a lot more stuff for it. So that's why I bought that one. And when it came out, I thought that thing is stupid. Looks hideous. So I'm gonna try to make it cool.
There you go.
And we'll see what happens.
Excited to see it.
And we'll see if if I don't get murdered by making fun of everybody with it.
Yeah, you're used to it. You've been around long enough. You're used to the troll activity. You just just put it on the ignore.
People are like, who's this guy calling people a nerd? I'm
exactly.
like, I've been called many things, but a nerd is certainly not frickin' one of them. Oh boy.
Yeah. Well, that'll be exciting to see. I'm excited to see that. Do you have anything, Aaron, before we let Matt go. He's a busy guy. We've been sucking up his
My
time.
one question was, have you played Wu-Tang Clan in the Civic Si I sent you?
Oh, yeah. Been driving around listening to Wu-Tang, Tribe Called Quest.
There you go.
I even broke out some of my old punk, like I was listening to Operation Ivy and No Effects in there too.
Yeah.
And
I was hanging out with somebody in their 20s the other day, and they're so young, and I think we were at a bowling alley of all places, and Tribe Called Quest came on. I was like, oh, this is such a good song, and they're like, what is this? And I just like literally like gave them our BF face and was just like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
Like, you don't know who this is.
Oh yeah, I've listened to all kinds of De La Soul.
Nice. Some Naughty by Nature.
No, see, I never did. I was East Coast only guy back in the day.
Gotcha.
Except for Tupac.
Yeah.
So when I ran out of East Coast rap, then I went into
Tupac,
a little bit of West
over.
Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I realized that I'm a whitey white, and you know, and I started listening to like sound cue music when I started selling home theater and stuff. Then I started to get into like, it was great because I never got into like Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or the Eagles or anything like that until I was older. So it was still left. It was all new to me. It was great.
Yeah. So it was like,
Yeah. So. Cool. Well, thanks for coming up, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Matt Mormon of Cess Garage, thanks for your time. Mike and Aaron from P-Car Talk. We loved it, man. It's always great coming over here and seeing your growth, and you're kicking butt, man. And
well, I'm trying to survive now. You know, it's trying to learn how to manage humans. It's not so easy for me. It was easy for me to do it all myself.
Yeah.
And now I'm in this weird place where I'm attempting to figure out how to exist in this space. Yeah. The responsibility that I have for other humans' success, and then not stepping in and stealing the win from them.
Yeah, that goes back to that controlling thing. That you probably battle with that daily.
Yeah, the difficulty of apathy versus versus being driven too hard and too fast. So
it's a delicate balance, right?
Yeah, I'm figuring it out.
Yeah.
So thanks for your time, guys.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
All right.